Path to Mediterranean Hegemony. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51, Nikolayan number 039:S visit. Since the fiasco in the Crimean War in 1856, Moscow suffered a heavy blow in the international hegemony, forcing it to turn its expansion focus to the Far East and the Pacific. The United Kingdom, the United States, Germany and other countries also hoped to lure bears to the Far East pastures, adding fuel to the flames. Before the Sino-Japanese War broke out, the foreign powers did not see the weakness of the Big Apple, and they hoped that the apple could take advantage of its geographical superiority to hold back the expansion of Moscow. At that time, there was a countercurrent of chauvinism in Russia, and the Orientalists in the ideological and cultural circles advocated, Russian culture is more closely related to Eastern culture than it is to European culture. Russia's historical mission. Under the instigation of his teacher, the Orientalist Eudomsky, the then Crown Prince Nicholas visited Greece, Egypt, India, China and Japan and other Oriental countries successively from 1890 to 1891. In October 1891, Nikolai and his party accepted the invitation of the Japanese royal family to visit Japan, and were also stabbed with a saber by a Japanese assassin, laying a hidden danger for the future Russo-Japanese War. It may be that the relationship between Russia and Bulgaria has tended to ease, or it may be a change in Germany's continental policy. Russia has become unprecedentedly isolated in Europe, urgently needs allies, and intends to strengthen relations with Bulgaria. One of the countries visited by Nikolai has added another, Bulgaria. Now that Mount threw an olive branch, Ferdinand said very bluntly that labor and capital didn't care. It was purely funny. Ferdinand immediately stopped his work and hurried back to Sofia, for fear of missing time. The above is purely mainly, Ferdinand had great expectations for Nikolai's visit. From a geopolitical point of view, the bear is also Bulgaria's first diplomatic target. Ferdinand cannot be ignored, and he must be prepared in advance. Nikolai's visit as the Crown Prince of Russia will certainly not be as simple as a tour. As for the purpose, Ferdinand is generally clear. It is nothing more than 2 points, or 1 point, to further improve the relationship between Russia and Bulgaria. Whether it will form an alliance or not depends on the price that Mount gives. As soon as you enter the political arena, you will become a passerby. Ferdinand ended his 3-month national inspection ahead of schedule, requisitioned a train, used it as a special train for the king, and returned to Sofia. Sitting on the bumpy train, Ferdinand was drinking tea leisurely while looking into the distance through the window, with a look of joy on his face. It is now April, spring returns to the earth, all things recover, the grass is green again, and the spring flowers are once again red. On the field, the grass has changed into emerald green clothes, and the earth is full of life. Alice walked over gently, seeming to feel Ferdinand's good mood, and said with a smile, "Your Excellency, Sofia just called, the Nunla Crown Prince has arrived in Ukraine, and will arrive in Burgas 3 days later, and then take the railroad to Sofia." Ferdinand spit out a sip of tea and asked in surprise, "God horse, didn't you say go to Greece first? Why did you suddenly change the itinerary?" Alice threw a wink at Ferdinand and said with a smile, "The telegram says that this is due to Archbishop Skrement." After hearing about the opening of the Sorbian Railway, he persuaded Crown Prince Nicholas to send the first stop was in Bulgaria. Ferdinand came back to his senses, realized that he had lost his way, and immediately returned to his former calmness. Glancing at Alice, who was snickering on the side, she said to hide her embarrassment, "Oh, Archbishop Skrement is in a hurry to show Nicholas the achievements of Bulgaria's modernization." Alice looked at Ferdinand and smiled knowingly, as if to say, "I know that there are no outsiders here. You can do whatever you want." Ferdinand knew that he had no intimidation in front of Alice. With his left hand, he pulled Alice into his arms, and his right hand began to walk around her. He looked at Alice with a smirk. Alice was so frightened that she was still very conservative. Although she had fallen into Ferdinand's clutches, She still did not intend to have a daytime prostitution with him. Seeing that she couldn't break free, Alice hurriedly said, "His Excellency the Grand Duke, let go, I still have a job." Is Sophia still waiting for a reply? Alice has no confidence in Ferdinand's integrity, especially in terms of beauty, as evidenced by the large number of dancers in the palace. Ferdinand smiled proudly and said, "Am I so scary? I won't eat you." Alice hurriedly said, "His Excellency the Grand Duke, what will we do next? Should we continue to return to Sofia, or return directly to Burgas?" I thought to myself, you won't. If I softened my attitude a little bit, I've been slapped by now. Ferdinand let go of Alice, pondered for a while, and said, "The itinerary remains the same, continue to Sofia." As soon as the words fell, Alice ran away. Only Ferdinand was left alone and sighed, "Am I so scary? No, it must be Alice who was too stupid and misunderstood what I meant, it must be." Bulgaria is a small area. From early morning to evening, Ferdinand rushed back to Sofia from Burgas. Ferdinand, exhausted from the long train ride, held an interim ministerial meeting at the palace. It is not long before Nikolai's visit. What position should Bulgaria take to treat him, or how to face the next Bulgarian-Russian relationship? Chekhov and Constantine met at the Sofia royal palace and looked at each other unexpectedly and smiled. Chekhov looked at Constantine and said, "Constantine, how do you think we will face Russia next? Do you want to form an alliance with them?" Constantine said calmly, "I'm afraid it depends on the sincerity of St. Petersburg brought by Crown Prince Nicholas." Chekhov nodded worriedly. Now in Bulgaria, the pro-Russian faction occupies the mainstream. Among the top government officials, only he and James, who had gradually faded out of the government, were anti-Russian factions. Chekhov has always been deeply wary of bears. He felt that Moscow had bad intentions towards Bulgaria, and even if they formed an alliance, they were just taking advantage of them and were unreliable. But he is weak, and this view has few supporters in the government. Ferdinand dragged his tired body and concluded, "Okay, everyone has agreed to strengthen relations with Russia. Then, the negotiations will be handed over to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The specific projects involved need to be determined by the government in the next few days. In principle, economic development is the main focus, such as importing mineral resources from Ukraine, introducing labor, etc. Today's meeting is classified as an S-class secret, and no one may disclose it to the outside world. Violators will be punished as treason." Chapter 52, Nicholas II. Nicholas II Alexandrovich was born on May 18, 1868 in St. Petersburg. He was the eldest son of Alexander III and Queen Maria, Princess Dagmar of Denmark. The last emperor of Russia, reigned from 1894 to 1917. The era of Nicholas II's succession to the throne was a period of turbulent change. Since the end of the 19th century, Russia, centered on heavy industry, has perfected its industrial system and created an insurmountable contradiction between the capitalist economy and the rotten and backward Russian political system. In Russia, the gap between the rich and the poor widened, a large number of peasants went bankrupt, and social contradictions intensified. Faced with these circumstances, he continued to suppress internal and external expansion from the perspective of maintaining his rule. Nikolai served as the chairman of the construction committee of the Trans-Siberian Railway during the time of the Crown Prince. In 1891, when he went to Vladivostok to preside over the opening ceremony of the Siberian Railway, he was invited by the Japanese royal family to visit Japan by the way, and was attacked in Otsu, known as the Otsu incident in history. After the Meiji Restoration, Japan developed rapidly capitalism, and its national strength also increased. By the end of the 19th century, Japan had become an Asian power. At that time, Japan was determined to become the hegemon of Asia and become one of the world's great powers, and the Japanese government felt panic in the face of Russia's aggressive expansion in the Far East. There is also a strong hatred of Russia among the Japanese people, and organizations such as the Black Dragon Society have emerged among the people. Therefore, before Nicholas's departure, anti-Russian organizations have begun to plan the assassination of the Russian crown prince. Nikolai was sightseeing in the streets of Tokyo during his visit to Japan, when a Japanese samurai rushed up to him and slashed at Nikolai with a saber. Fortunately, Nikolai's entourage responded quickly and pushed him away, saving him from being a ghost under the knife, but a piece of scalp was still cut off by the knife, and the crown prince was immediately sent to the hospital. Although he escaped, Nicholas II had an obvious scar on his head and suffered from severe migraine headaches, which is the memory of his trip to the Far East. After returning from the Far East, Nikolai said, "This trip influenced me and made me interested in the Far East." Although the Japanese officials quickly arrested the murderer, apologized to Nikolai, and paid a high price, the matter was settled. Obviously, this matter is not so easy to end. Nikolai is not so broad-minded, and it is impossible to satisfy him just by arresting an assassin. After the Sino-Japanese War in 1894, the conflict between Japan and Russia in the Far East became increasingly public. In 1895, he joined forces with Germany and France to interfere with Japan's return of the Big Apple to the Liaodong Peninsula. Hidden danger for the Russo-Japanese War. In 1900, after the outbreak of the Boxer Rebellion, Nicholas sent troops to join the eight-power Allied forces, invaded Beijing, China, and occupied northeast China. During the expansion activities in the Far East, there were violent conflicts with Japan in Korea and Manchuria, which triggered the Russo-Japanese War in 1904. The Mao, who was not ready, caused a Japanese raid at the beginning of the war and suffered heavy losses. Later, although it was relieved by its strong national strength, the poor traffic in the Far East and the logistics were unable to support them to launch a counterattack, and they have been in a stalemate. Nikolai may have been desperate for revenge, and his head twitched, sending the Russian Navy to the Far East. There was a suicide campaign that destroyed the second-largest navy in the world at the time. In the Russo-Japanese War, Russia was defeated and Japan was victorious. In 1905, after Lushun was conquered by Japan, a revolution broke out in St. Petersburg, known in history as Bloody Sunday. Due to Stolypin's reforms, he temporarily survived the difficulties, but he fell into more complicated Balkan problems, which continued to consume the vitality of the empire. Because the crown prince Alexei suffered from hemophilia, Nicholas II spent most of his time in seclusion with his family in the Tsarist village of St. Petersburg and the Black Sea. Because the queen favored evil monk Rasputin, causing dissatisfaction among young nobles and officers, Nicholas II gradually lost the support of the military, bureaucrats and capitalists. In 1914, Russia had just recovered its vitality, and Nicholas II led Russia to join the First World War. Due to the unfavorable situation of the war, the lack of materials, and the hoarding of capitalists, the support of the people was gradually lost. In 1917, Germany provided aid to the CPSU, and Lenin passed through German territory from Switzerland and returned via Finland to start a revolution that would bring Russia out of the war. In March 1917, the citizens of St. Petersburg launched a demonstration against hunger, and the February Revolution broke out. On March 15, 1917, Nikolai abdicated and passed the throne to his younger brother, Grand Duke Mikhail Alexandrovich, but was rejected by his younger brother, so the Romanov dynasty perished. After Nicholas II abdicated, the British government refused to accept his family's asylum in England. After the October Revolution, the family of Nicholas II was wiped out by the Bolshevik army. Of course, this is all a matter of parallel time and space, and now Nikolai is complacent, as the crown prince of one of the most powerful empires in the world right now. It is high spirits. 3 days later, in the port of Burgas, Nikolai and his party left the warship and entered Bulgaria. Oh, Bishop Skirmont, you're here. I haven't had time to congratulate you on the opening of the Sorbian Railway. I'm so sorry, Nikolai said with a smile. Skirmont said excitedly, Your Highness, you are too polite. Compared with the great Russian Empire, what we have achieved is not worth mentioning. Nikolai smiled and said nothing. Apparently he thought so too. In 1891, the total railway mileage in Russia was as high as 30,723 kilometers. And what about Bulgaria? Even if it is driven by a traveler like Ferdinand, the total mileage of the current railway is only 1,000 kilometers. As for industrial development, the two sides are even further apart. Russia has a complete industrial system, While Bulgaria's industry is still blank in many respects. Nikolai didn't seem to be in a hurry. When he arrived at Burgas port, he didn't rush to Sofia, but started to play in the mountains and waters. When Ferdinand received a telegram from Skirmont, he knew that Nicholas was not as bad as you were judged by later generations. Any emperor who can hold real power should not be underestimated. Traveling in the mountains and waters is mostly observing Bulgaria's strength, and then deciding what attitude to take towards Bulgaria, except for the political novices like Skirmont. Basically everyone can see the purpose of Nicholas. Nicholas directly used the conspiracy, and Ferdinand could not do anything even if he knew it. Taking a hard sip of tea, Ferdinand didn't like this situation beyond his control. It lasted for more than a month, and Nikolai stopped and walked along the way, playing around. Maybe he was bored, or maybe he should see it. In May, we finally arrived in Sofia. Thanks for your support! In the afternoon, someone asked a question about Giajan, so let me talk about it. In principle, the Helm Master starts to add one more update, and then accumulates it according to the level. There is no. It can be regarded as bullshit! The recommended votes remain at around 600, plus one more! The above promises are valid this week! Chapter 53, Nikolayan number 039 visit to Bulgaria. Nicholas traveled to Bulgaria. Ferdinand held a grand welcome ceremony at the Sofia Palace. According to European rules, curtsy to someone with a royal title higher than oneself, squat with both legs and knees, step back half a step with the other foot, keep the body upright, look at the person being greeted, and bow your head to show respect. In order to show the importance of Nicholas, the senior officials of the Bulgarian government were dispatched together, and under the leadership of Ferdinand, they respectfully greeted Nicholas. Originally Ferdinand didn't have to go out in person, but unfortunately he can't send enough members of the royal family now. In order not to offend the careful Nicholas, Ferdinand finally went out in person. After a tedious set of etiquette, Ferdinand, as the host, said with a bright smile, "Nicholas, welcome you." They are also old acquaintances, they have met each other several times. Of course, their friendship is limited to a few greetings. Ferdinand still knew something about Nicholas, knowing that he is very proud, looks down on people of humble origin, and does not like to have close contact with commoners. I am even more jealous of those ministers with outstanding abilities, which may be related to the political environment in Russia, always worried that one day, the ministers will take away his monarchy. Ferdinand knew that the pro-Russian faction in Bulgaria was very strong now, and many ministers had high expectations for Nicholas and did not care. Birth and status determine political stance. There may be people in the Russian government who support them, but Nikolai's character has been decided, and he can't mix with a bunch of civilians. Nicholas also smiled and said, "Thank you, Ferdinand, it's been a long time." In the words of the Orientals, 3 days apart, you should be impressed. You've changed so much. Well, people always change, and your change is not small. You didn't say such things before. Ferdinand pushed back directly. It seems that the dialogue between the two people with guns and sticks shocked the Bulgarian ministers, but on this occasion, they have no right to speak. After crossing over, Ferdinand, after dealing with the great nobles, knew that Western and Eastern values were different. The identities are equal, and there is no need to be subtle when speaking. It is straight and straightforward, but it is easier to be respected. If you want to beat a horse, you will have to test your level. At least Ferdinand thinks he has no ability. Haha. God bless. It seems that you have been doing well recently. I also heard in St. Petersburg that you expelled a group of rogues and thieves, and you did a good job. Many people used to see it wrong and thought you were a full-fledged businessman! Nikolai laughed. Oh, yes, you have changed a lot from each other. The original Nikolai would not have such a keen observation. By the way, I want to know that there is no Your Excellency among the people who are wrong? Nan asked. On the surface of the banquet, the conversation between the two did not seem to be very pleasant. Nikolai didn't even attend the ball. He just showed his face and hurried past. Many people in Sofia will not be able to sleep tonight, and the people spontaneously turned their attention to Nikolai's visit. Among the ministers who attended the banquet, some looked different, some were confident, some were worried, and some were happy. Those who are confident are all Ferdinand's die-hard loyalists and have confidence in him. Those who are worried are mostly his supporters, who do not want changes to interrupt Bulgaria's development. Those who are happy are dissatisfied with the status quo. People seem to sense an opportunity in it. These Ferdinand didn't care, and by talking to Nicholas, he could already be sure that the wheel of history had not changed. Maung's next strategy has shifted from Europe to the Far East. Farewell for 3 days. Look at it with admiration. If you don't understand Oriental culture, you can't tell. As the Crown Prince of Russia, the future czar, will he be bored when he has nothing to do? Study Oriental culture? According to Ferdinand, Nikolai is not that studious. The Crown Prince of the Russian Empire is not as laid back as Edward, and there are a lot of things waiting for him to deal with. Uktomsky, one of the representatives of Russia's eastward movement, it seems that the purpose of our visit to Bulgaria has basically been achieved. Nikolai said happily. Uktomsky said calmly, yes, His Royal Highness, the Bulgarian gang of turtles, it is easy to pull them over, but Archduke Ferdinand is a bit difficult to deal with. Nikolai said indifferently, it's nothing more than profit. Ferdinand is indeed surprising, but in just 2 years, he has single-handedly controlled Bulgaria. But that's all. Bulgaria is only a small country. After all, internationally, in the battle, it is destined to only be attached to the wings of a big country. His Royal Highness, Russia's future lies in the Far East, and the Balkans are not worth keeping our energy down. Uktomsky preached. Nikolai said confidently, you are right. Bulgaria is a traditional ally of the empire. The people-to-people relationship between the two countries has always been very good. It is our natural ally in the Balkans, and now Bulgaria is developing very fast. It is already Russia's largest trading partner in the Balkans, and it is not difficult to pull them over. Uktomsky asked in surprise, His Royal Highness plans to use the economy to control Bulgaria. Nikolai looked at Uktomsky and smiled and said, why not? Bulgaria is poor in resources. From a geographical point of view, importing from Russia is the cheapest. The faster they develop, the more they can't do without us. Uktomsky fell into contemplation. Yes, Bulgaria has embarked on a road of industrialization, and the resources it needs will definitely not be self-sufficient, and must be imported. There are many countries in the world that can provide resources, but the economically feasible only Ukraine. There is no choice. Seeing Uktomsky's worries, Nikolai thought he was worried about affecting Russia's future national policy, and immediately assured, Uktomsky, don't have to worry, the future strategy of the empire is in the Far East, and the establishment of a Yellow Russia is history. Give us a mission. Knowing that Nikolai had misunderstood, Uktomsky quickly explained, His Royal Highness, I am not worried that it will affect the future national policy. Now there are a lot of problems in the Balkan countries. Bulgaria's development can be described as a unique one. I am afraid that in the future it will break the balance of the region. Nikolai nodded, thought about it, and said, you are overthinking. Bulgaria's size is too small. Even if it develops, it will be a Belgium at most. Even so, we also solved the Far East problem at that time, and there are enough the power to suppress them. Nikolai may not know that the place where they talked has been installed with the most primitive bugs, and now it has reached Ferdinand's ears. Chapter 54, On the Feasibility of Alliance. The next day, the two sides held friendly talks and signed a covenant. Oh, it's all ye on it. Diplomatic negotiations are never easy, and such negotiations involving future national policy strategies are even more troublesome. In fact, the next day, Ferdinand and Nikolai were in Sofia. God's back garden is not a false name. Even Sofia in the 19th century had the prototype of a garden city. Now the flowers are in full bloom, the trees are shady, the birds are singing, and the flowers are fragrant. For some reason, Nikolai has recently become obsessed with history and culture. Although Bulgaria is not one of the 4 ancient countries, it has some historical background, which can be traced back thousands of years. The Thracians settled here in 2000 BC. The ancestors of the Bulgarians were the ancient Bulgarians who migrated from Central Asia and merged into the Byzantine Empire in 395 AD. In 681 AD, the Slavs who moved south from the north bank of the Danube, the ancient Bulgarians and Thracians who moved westward from the northern Caucasus, under the leadership of Han Asparuch, defeated the Byzantine army and established the Slavic Bulgarian kingdom in the Danube Valley. Historical history. Called the First Bulgarian Kingdom. Sofia was built and settled here by the Thracian Sirti tribe from the 8th century BC to the 7th century BC, and has a history of more than 2,800 years. It is an ancient city with a long history in Europe, called Serdica in ancient times. Now there are remnants of the broken wall, and the specific age is difficult to verify, revealing the vicissitudes and changes experienced by Bulgaria. In 809 AD, Sofia became part of the Slavic Bulgarian state and has been the gathering area for the Slavs of the Balkans ever since. Ferdinand, Serdica is so beautiful, it's cheaper for you, Nikolai said with some envy. That's right. Compared with the great Russian Empire, it's not worth mentioning. Ferdinand followed suit and gave a small compliment. Yes, but Russia is too cold. We have a country larger than the whole of Europe, but most of it is frozen soil. Now the world is almost divided up, and the best land is in the hands of the British. Are you willing? Nikolai didn't hide his dissatisfaction with the British, and couldn't help revealing it. Ferdinand rolled his eyes and expressed his dissatisfaction. Is this looking for excitement? If Bulgaria had that strength, Lao Tzu would have acted long ago. After thinking about it, Ferdinand decided to stimulate Nicholas as well, saying, I don't think you should tell me this sentence. It's better to tell Wilhelm II or Franz Joseph I. Their interest will be bigger. As soon as Ferdinand finished speaking, Nicholas seemed to be stimulated, and said a little excitedly, Don't mention those two bastards in front of me. They are a group of cowards, and they have no courage to sway the British tigers. They only know how to do it in Europe. Small action. Ferdinand smiled and did not continue the topic. Russia's current relationship with Germany and Austria is not very good. 30 years ago, in the Crimean War, Austria-Hungary betrayed Russia and turned to Britain and France, resulting in a disastrous defeat for Russia, and the hatred between the two sides accumulated. Wilhelm II, who had just succeeded to the throne, tore up the German-Russian reinsurance treaty not long ago. If he could still calm down, he would not be Nicholas. Seemingly aware of his gaffe, Nikolai adjusted his emotions and said gracefully, Sorry, you know I'm in a hurry. Ferdinand still said with a smile, It doesn't matter, but your identity is not suitable for such words. Nikolai nodded, but did not speak. Ferdinand had pondered over his character, and he knew very well that Nicholas, who was usually polite and courteous, would find it difficult to restrain himself when he was angry, and he would no longer be his usual shrewdness. Then he said, Nicholas, what is the purpose of your trip this time? Of course it's to understand the world and gain experience. Oh, why are you suddenly concerned about this? Nikolai asked with some doubt. All right, you keep selling off, but I can still guess that the strategy of St. Petersburg is about to change, right? Said Ferdinand in an affirmative tone. Nikolai was shocked, and said without changing his face, How do you know? There are no more than 10 people who know the news now. Ferdinand looked at Nicholas and said confidently, It's very simple. The current international situation, coupled with your travel route, has exposed the secret. Without the German-Russian alliance, if St. Petersburg's next focus is still in Europe, then it will have to face the German-Austrian-Italy-British alliance. Unless St. Petersburg wants to have another war like the Crimea, the strategy will inevitably change. It just so happens that the neighbors to the east are all weakened. Now that you are heading east, I am afraid that you are planning to gain a deeper understanding of the strength of the eastern countries. The next expansion goal of your country is either the Ottoman Empire or the Manchu King in the east. Nikolai frowned. He didn't like the situation when the situation got out of control. Looking at Ferdinand, he said coldly, Really, you are so sure? Why don't you guess the Balkans? Ferdinand didn't answer, and after looking at Nicholas, he said, The Balkans are complicated and complicated. No matter how much they expand, Russia will not be able to eat it now. maybe accidentally, the Quadruple Alliance will be established, and then your country will face the challenges even greater. The shrewdness of the St. Petersburg government is impossible not to see, otherwise your country will not move closer to France. Nicholas pondered for a moment, and said coldly, "Yes, Ferdinand, seems that we still underestimated you, so we can understand it soon. This matter will not be kept secret for long, even if it is exposed now. At most it's a little more troublesome to enter the plan. We go to the Far East. It is estimated that it is just in accordance with their wishes." Ferdinand said cautiously, "Of course, with your country's strength, the Manchu king is definitely not an opponent, but what about the future? Once your country gains a firm foothold in the East, it will certainly harm the interests of the British, and the European scumbag is not a false name." Nikolai seemed to be fed up with Ferdinand and was unwilling to continue bullshitting. He went straight to the point and said, "Tell me, what do you want? What kind of return can you bring to Russia?" "It is very simple. I want to build a solid alliance with Russia. Your country's decision to move eastward will inevitably lead to a strategic contraction in Europe. I hope that your country can support Bulgaria's expansion in the Balkans, and in return your interests in the Balkans will also be expand. If the conditions are ripe in the future, Romania can be divided up, and even if your country wants to capture Constantinople, we can also provide support," Ferdinand said cautiously. Nicholas was shocked. Ferdinand's appetite was beyond his imagination. It was definitely not easy for a small Bulgarian to break the balance in the Balkans. But the return is also very attractive. Expanding interests in the Balkans. This is not enough to tempt Nikolai. Carving up Romania is indeed a piece of fat. The most important thing is Constantinople. This is the dream of several generations of Russians. Every time I fail and return, the main reason is that there is no ally. On this issue, the European powers and the Balkan countries are all their enemies. Now that Ferdinand is on the side of Russia on the issue of Constantinople, Nicholas can't believe it. Asked, "Are you sure?" "Of course," said Ferdinand with certainty. If Ferdinand was not a transmigrator, he would not dare to make such a promise. With the full support of Bulgaria, would the Bears be able to occupy Constantinople? The answer is, yes. The two sides are too close. With Bulgaria at the rear, Malin will take the initiative in strategy, and the odds of winning are extremely high. Once hairy bears gain a foothold in the Mediterranean, the Balkans can be declared theirs. If it really happened, even if Ferdinand dominated the Balkans, he would not be able to compete with it, and the whole of Europe would crawl under the shadow of the bear. You can refer to the Soviet Union in the heyday of later generations. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55, Russian Secret Pact. Okay, Russia can support Bulgaria's expansion in the Balkans, but only to contain other major powers. We will not send troops directly. Nikolai has calmed down. Although Ferdinand's promise is tempting, the success rate is very low. Don't plan to invest too much. Although Ferdinand knew about Nikolai's plan, he didn't care. His real goal had been achieved. For the sake of secrecy, a secret alliance with Russia must be a secret treaty, and the diplomatic impact will not be too great. Bulgaria can obtain sufficient mining resources and human resources from Russia and complete industrialization in a short period of time. In the future, the international situation will change. Malin was defeated in the Russo-Japanese War. It has just recovered and caught up with the World War. There is no chance for Malin to complete this strategy, and plans will always be plans. Historically isolated and helpless in the Balkan Wars, Bulgaria will cease to exist. Of course, it is not obvious now that although the Serbian pro-Russian faction has come to power, they are still the younger brothers of Austro-Hungary. Russia has no choice at all at this moment. Note, in 1891, Greece was the territory of the British, and Romania had signed a treaty with Germany. Having reached a preliminary agreement with Nicholas, Ferdinand breathed a sigh of relief. The biggest problem of Bulgaria's development has been solved. and the next step is to develop it fully. We must hurry up and quickly get rid of the Balkan countries in terms of national strength. In the next negotiation, Ferdinand did not need to go out in person. Bulgaria is a luxurious version of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs consisting of Konstantin and Chekhov, among others, and the Russian representative is headed by Duke Ukhtomsky. This may be good news for Bulgaria. Is Duke Ukhtomsky familiar? He is the civilian diplomat who is active in St. Petersburg, Beijing, Shanghai and Vladivostok. He is a representative of the Russian Eastern faction, who advocates strategic contraction in Europe, expansion to the Far East, and the establishment of Yellow Russia. Since Ferdinand and Nicholas had already had a showdown, the two sides did not have major differences on the issue of principle, so the negotiation proceeded smoothly, and there were still some specific details to be discussed. Nikolai stayed in Bulgaria for more than a month, and the negotiations are still far away. Ukhtomsky was again the main figure in the entourage, and he could not be kept, which seriously affected his eastward plan. Mr. Ukhtomsky, can you speed up the progress? It's been more than a month, and it's only halfway done. Nikolai often urged His Royal Highness. We are already progressing very fast, but we are stuck on the details. Ukhtomsky explained. Nikolai heard the words, his face changed, and he said angrily, I'm stuck. Could it be that something happened to the Bulgarian side and wanted the lion to speak up? Oh, that's not it. It's just some ordinary business negotiations, normal bargaining. Ukhtomsky hurriedly explained that as the vanguard of the Eastern Advancement faction, he didn't want to have any accident that would affect the east of the empire. Into strategy. Nikolai's expression softened slightly, and he asked a little dejectedly, how long will it take to complete it? Ukhtomsky hesitantly said, it's hard to say. Normal business negotiations are very troublesome, involving too many industries, so we can only talk one by one, and we need to find all kinds of information, so it's hard to say how long it will take to be completed. Nikolai was startled and suddenly understood, and a bold idea suddenly popped up in his mind. Since it is an ordinary commercial and trade agreement, why don't we just sign a draft first, and the specific details will be taken over by the Russian Foreign Ministry. He opened his mouth and said, Mr. Ukhtomsky, simply sign the peace agreement that has been negotiated first, and hand over the subsequent negotiations to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His Royal Highness, this is not good. If we hand over like this, the work behind the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will be difficult to do, and it will be difficult for them to grasp the degree, Duke Ukhtomsky said dutifully after entering the state. Nikolai said casually, it doesn't matter. You can explain to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and release some goodwill appropriately. Anyway, as long as the zero tariff agreement is signed, the Bulgarian market has been fully opened to us, and some details are not important at all. Okay then. Ukhtomsky thought for a while, and this is the same reason, or the eastward strategy is more important. Compared with this aspect, the Balkans' little interests are not worth mentioning. Nikolai still doesn't know how much loss this hasty decision will bring to Russia in the future. It is estimated that he knows or doesn't care. Before leaving, Ferdinand sent a huge gift, including a huge check for £500,000. It can be regarded as to appease Nikolai's injured heart, and he manages up and down one by one, and he is short-handed. So the release of some kindness that Nikolai explained is infinitely magnified. Then, amid laughter, Nikolai left Bulgaria for the next stop, Greece. The foreign ministry official who was in charge of taking over from St. Petersburg, Paul Shuvalov, was a little confused. St. Petersburg's request was to strive for the interests of the empire as much as possible, but the crown prince's order was just the opposite. Paul Shuvalov is now in a difficult position. He was originally the ambassador to Germany, but he was unlucky. It happened to catch up with Wilhelm II to tear up the German-Russian reinsurance treaty. Then he was dismissed, and now he was demoted to Bulgaria. St. Petersburg's order must be executed, and the crown prince must not be offended. His current position is still a coincidence. Just to win over Bulgaria, a person with enough identity is needed to serve as an ambassador. At this time, an uninvited guest solved the problem for him, and Nikolai's valet Smith Vicky came. After receiving the benefits sent by Ferdinand, He pretended to be sick and stayed. Paul Shuvalov asked in disbelief. Mr. Smith, did the Crown Prince really say that? Of course, you can send a telegram to ask, is this what I dare to lie? Mr. Paul Shuvalov, the initial negotiation was between His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and the Archduke of Bulgaria. Some of these agreements were secret, and these concessions were included in the class. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs does not know. Smith Wiki said with certainty. Paul Shuvalov was shocked and broke out in a cold sweat. Why did this unfortunate thing happen to him again? Even the Ministry of Foreign Affairs does not know about secrecy, so how can you ask? As for the truth of the matter, he has no doubts. In the telegram that Nikolai sent him, he clearly asked for the release of goodwill. Isn't this understandable? But I didn't expect such a big concession. After thinking about it, Paul Shuvalov finally decided to do the same. He was just cheated by the Germans, and now he is afraid. Anyway, the most damage to the national interests, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs can use Nikolai's telegrams to communicate. Well, I understand what to do, Mr. Smith. Thank you for your advice. Otherwise it will be troublesome to disrupt the Crown Prince's layout. Chapter 56. God in number 039:S back garden. In Bulgaria in June, the rose has bloomed with a smile. The flower is like a small wine glass, and the petals bloom slightly in a spiral. It looks beautiful and charming. Gently approached it, took a deep breath, and a faint fragrance came to the nostrils. It is indeed God's back garden, Ferdinand said with emotion, looking at the roses blooming all over the mountains and fields. A flash of inspiration. Rose essential oil, rose tea. Ferdinand suddenly burst out laughing. Sit on the mountain without knowing it. Roses are deciduous shrubs belonging to the Rosaceae family. Rosaceae, with thorny branches. Odd pinnate compound leaves, leaflets 5-9, elliptic, with side prickles, surface wrinkled, most stipules kite with petioles. The flowers are solitary and clustered, purple, pink, yellow, white, and fragrant. Roses are both beautiful and fragrant. In addition to their ornamental value, they are also a good raw material for scenting tea and extracting aromatic oils. Rose tea is a mixture of fresh roses and tea bud tips in proportion, and can also be made into rose tea. Its aroma is strong, light, and not violent. Rose is also a precious medicinal material. It is used for beauty, activating meridians, softening blood vessels, and has significant curative effects on cardiovascular and cerebrovascular, high blood pressure, heart disease and gynecology. Reconcile liver and spleen, regulate qi in stomach, promote blood circulation, activate blood and beautify skin, warm stomach and liver, prevent constipation, reduce fire, astringe, regulate menstruation, especially suitable for women with endocrine disorders and low back pain. Bulgaria was the world's largest exporter of rose oil in the previous life. Rose oil is the main raw material for making high-end perfumes. It has always been in short supply and has the reputation of liquid gold. The production history of Bulgarian rose oil has been more than 200 years, and there is no technical difficulty. As early as the 16th century, Bulgarians began to extract rose water from roses, and began to produce rose essential oil in 1680. Beginning in the mid-18th century, Bulgarian rose oil was exported to Europe either by sea via Istanbul, Turkey, or by land via Bucharest, Romania and Vienna, Austria. Until the 19th century, rose oil production in Bulgaria's Rose Valley was carried out in family workshops. By the beginning of the 20th century, Bulgaria had become the largest producer of rose oil in the world, with the main growing areas in Kazanlak, Karlov, Chepan, Stara and Nova Zagreb. After entering the 20th century, Bulgaria's peak annual output was as high as 6,000 kilograms, with about 200,000 workers engaged in the rose production industry, providing more than half of the world's rose oil demand. There are many varieties of Bulgarian roses, such as Bulgarian roses, Damascus roses, purple roses, Fengwa roses, etc., and they are of high quality and are widely loved by people. Before Lemieux crossed over, when he was mixing on Taobao, in order to sell low-quality perfumes at high prices, he knew a lot about this. In a world where the internet is highly developed, The raw materials for producing perfumes are no secret, and rose essential oil is recognized as the best raw material for making perfumes. In the 21st century, urban white-collar workers who have suffered from pesticides and fertilizers have begun to advocate green environmental protection, pure natural and pollution-free, and even a little crazy. Thinking that the traditional and primitive process is the most environmentally friendly. Lemieux also specially studied the production process of rose essential oil. Rose petals contain more oil, and stamens also contain some oil, which can be added to the petals for extraction. The methods of extracting rose oil are solvent extraction, distillation extraction, and carbon dioxide extraction. In the early days of Bulgaria, the distillation method was used to extract rose oil, and rose petals were obtained by steam distillation. But the oil yield of rose petals was very low, about 0.02 to 0.05% on average. The roses must also be collected before the sun rises on the summit, otherwise they will lose their color and fragrance due to the sunlight. The extraction of essential oils by solvent extraction in Bulgaria began in 1904. This extraction method increased yield tenfold and has since become very common. In order to sell inferior perfume at the price of high-end perfume, Lemieux roughly memorized these technological processes, just to fool female customers who do not understand. Customer: boss, there is something wrong with the perfume you sell. Lemieux: what's the problem? If it's the quality of the product itself, I'll give you a refund. Customer: the fragrance is too weak, not as good as the one I used before. Lemieux: oh, this is a normal situation. Your perfume is handmade from pure nature. The main raw material, rose essential oil, is artificially distilled, and the concentration is naturally not as good as chemically extracted. You have always seen roses. Is the fragrance so strong? The fragrance is too concentrated, and chemical additives must have been added to it. Customer: yes. Lemieux: of course, if you are worried, you can go to the flower shop and smell the roses. You can also go to the internet to check the information, and Baidu will come out in one click. If it is different from what I said, no matter if there is any problem, I unconditionally return it, and the courier fee is mine. Customer: oh, that's fine! The above is Ferdinand's daily work in his previous life. He was proud of the concept of environmental protection and green into his life, which allowed him to take the opportunity to earn a fortune, and the half-dead Taobao store did not close. Rose essential oil has always been a scarce commodity, and the price in the international market remains high. Historically, the output value of Bulgarian rose oil was 900 kilograms in 1849, 1,500 kilograms in 1852, and 3,000 to 6,000 kilograms in 1905–1914. At that time, more than 70% of the roses that made perfumes and fragrances in the world came from Bulgaria. It can be seen from the above data that the late 19th century to the early 20th century was the golden age for the development of the Bulgarian rose industry chain. Ferdinand thought about it and felt that once the rose industry chain was developed, it would definitely become a new economic growth point for Bulgaria in the future. In 1891, although Bulgaria almost monopolized the supply of rose essential oil in the world, it had no pricing power. The small family-style backward production methods cannot unite to dominate the pricing power of products. They are defeated by foreign capitalists one by one, and a large amount of profits are occupied by international capital, and they have to be reduced to raw materials. In addition to the above information, what impressed Ferdinand the most was eating. It seems that when you arrive at the big foodie empire, the first reaction is, can you eat this thing? What about the taste? Eating roses was only carried forward in the big foodie empire, and then passed back to the Western world. For example, rose milk tea sago. It is said that it was developed by looking for a female foodie, wanting to lack raw materials with pearl milk tea. It is made with a little sago, rose tea, a small amount of glutinous rice flour, matcha powder, cocoa powder, black tea, bayberry, mint leaves, etc. The specific method is Baidu. The author is not a foodie, and does not care about the method. There are also rose porridge and rose water, and even stir-fried roses. deep-fried roses, and soups with roses. Oh, the author has also eaten rose pancakes, and the taste is unforgettable. It is comparable to looking up at the starry sky. There are various ways to do it. There is no impossible, only unexpected. I sent the book early in the morning, too tired. The author does not want to stay up late. Good night. Chapter 57, Negotiation. When Ferdinand was thinking about it, Alice's clear voice came. Grand Duke, the diplomatic envoy of the Russian Empire, Count Paul Shuvalov is here. Ferdinand retracted his thoughts and said, well, I see. Please invite him to rest in the parlor first, and I'll see him there later. Taking a deep breath, Ferdinand suddenly felt refreshed. The moment has come to decide the future fate of Bulgaria, and all that has to be done has been done. Ferdinand shouted, here comes. Grand Duke, what are your orders? The attendant came over immediately. You go and notify the minister in Sofia, and the officials above will have a meeting at the palace at night. Ferdinand ordered. The attendant replied, okay, Your Excellency, I'll do it right away. After sorting out his appearance, Ferdinand decided to see Count Paul Shuvalov first. In any case, Bulgaria is still asking for Russian now, and the etiquette cannot be neglected. Paul Shuvalov in the living room, seeing Ferdinand coming, immediately put his left hand on his right chest, took off his hat with his right hand, bowed slightly forward and nodded in salute. His Excellency the Grand Duke, Count Paul Shuvalov of the Russian Empire, greetings to you. Ferdinand also nodded politely, expressing his acceptance of Paul Shuvalov's greeting. Count Paul Shuvalov, welcome to Bulgaria! There was a lot of etiquette wrangling, and Ferdinand was busy for most of the day. Oh, no, it should be the topic of no nutrition that we talked about for a long time before we got to the point. Ferdinand studied the diplomatic rhetoric of later generations and began to brag about the relationship between the two countries. Count Paul, the Russian Empire and Bulgaria are a strip of water, and the relationship between the two countries has a long history. Although there have been some misunderstandings, this does not affect the friendly relationship between us. The connection between Sofia and St. Petersburg can be traced back hundreds of years. The religions, cultures, languages and customs of the two peoples have too much in common, and they once fought against the common enemy of the Ottomans. I am optimistic about the development of the relationship! Paul Shuvalov was a little confused, watching Ferdinand talking about the friendly relations between the two countries, from history to the present, from religion and culture to language and customs, from politics to economy. In short, it means that the two countries must have good relations. Anyone who destroys the diplomatic relations between the two countries will be a sinner of history and will be spurned by the people of the two countries. After all, Count Paul Shuvalov has never experienced it, and the influence of the internet era is still shameful. Ferdinand began to play tricks. He didn't know how to refute. The first time I heard it, what Ferdinand said was very reasonable. He came here this time with sincerity. If you think about it carefully, you will know that it is in trouble. If there is no conclusion, Paul Shuvalov will become a historical sinner and the culprit of destroying the relationship between the two countries. After all, Ferdinand was well prepared, and he was influenced by the internet era in his previous life, and his integrity had long been thrown into Java. Prepared the manuscript in advance, and played it on the spot, spitting on the stars. With the advantage of his identity, he bombarded Count Paul Shuvalov indiscriminately, which lasted for more than 2 hours. Paul Shuvalov finally left the palace in a daze, and his previous thoughts were disrupted. Coupled with the pressure of Nikolai's telegram, I now think that friendly relations between Russia and Bulgaria are imperative. Anyone who has seen the MLM brainwashing record knows what Ferdinand is doing. You guessed it right, this is brainwashing. If it was in later generations, it is estimated that it would have been sprayed with dog blood, but it was very applicable in the 19th century. In this era when the nobility has never fallen, the influence of the great nobility is beyond the imagination of ordinary people. In the identity of Ferdinand, what he said was still easy to accept. Paul Shuvalov naturally thinks that Ferdinand is a pro-Russian faction. Otherwise, when it comes to the relationship between the two countries, there are so many reasons to withdraw. Now improve the relationship between Russia and Bulgaria, and even form an alliance. For Russia, it was a diplomatic victory. Since Germany tore up the German-Russian Reinsurance Pact, the Russian Empire has been diplomatically isolated, and there is no longer a significant ally on the European continent. Russia and Austria-Hungary were rivals in the Balkans, and there were conflicts in Poland. In terms of economy and trade, the conflict between Germany and Russia has a long history. As long as the Junkers aristocrats are there, it is estimated that there is no chance to resolve them. Oh, this can be ignored. After all, it is not the core issue, it is nothing more than tariffs. Not to mention the Ottoman Empire, it is a never-ending feud. You can see from the long borderline that it is the source of contradictions. Next up is the British Empire. I did it in the Crimea 30 years ago, but they're a European bullshit. One-on-one fights can't be changed to group fights. Nicholas expresses that he has the ability. You deign come over to fight one-on-one. I will let you do one hand, and if you don't come, it will be your grandson. How does Victoria do it, and you don't have the general knowledge of a rough person like you? We are wise and civilized people. We have to fight one-on-one, right? Come on, I will fight at sea, whoever will be the grandson. Of course, this is not enough. Bullying the Russian Navy is nothing. We are a strong army country. If you have the ability, see you on land. Nicholas, I said to see it. I have already launched it, and I want to expand to the Ottomans. If you are counseled, I will enter. Mediterranean. Oh, Victoria is angry. You are a bull. Don't you think about who is John Bull? Immediately find the old enemy France. Don't you want to take revenge with 3? The opportunity has come. Let's fight the savage in Russia together, and help you avenge the revenge of Waterloo. Interests. Don't worry, the Mediterranean decided to have you a share, and my sister will share a bowl of soup for you. Then the British and French groups brought the Ottoman brothers to fight against Russia. Nicholas, I said that the most important thing for me is gray animals. Come on, hurt each other, see who can afford it. Victoria looked. This is not good. Maun is not easy to deal with. John Bull, can't fight him to the death. Then continue to exert the power of the European chitstick and make a unique trick. Pull allies. First, Prussia and Austria announced their neutrality, and Maun was angry. Well, you two were 5 Austrians. We will settle the account later. Oh, Victoria said, boy, you are too young. Where are you going? Waiting for you to feel better later. Let's see. This Sardinian kingdom has joined again. Don't underestimate the ability of our European scumbags to pull people. Next, the small countries will not be mentioned. Anyway, they are all cheering, and there are many in Europe. By the way, I'm putting a few revolutionary parties for you. Don't thank me. John Bull is so selfless and contributes to the cause of human liberation. What? Odili jumped backwards. Nima, the good ally. It's okay if you are neutral, but now you've turned your back on it. You're ruthless with our lying Tsai, and I can't end it. Nicholas, I panicked. What should I do? The tigers can't hold back the wolves. The war can no longer be fought, and there are chaos in the country, and it's over. Okay, I admit defeat. Nicholas, I was also a bachelor, so he simply resisted all the charges, took a pack of Sanlu milk powder, and went to see God with one leg. Seeing that the emperor is dead, and the Russians are not making trouble, what should I do? Alexander II succeeded to the throne and began to work hard. Maun, who recovered his vitality, said that Lao Tzu refused to accept it. Britain and Russia continue to work, and small conflicts are skipped. In the recent conflict in Afghanistan, Russia has the 3 Emperors alliance, which is slightly better. John Bull said that he would not cut it. The alliance of the 3 Emperors is a piece of shit. Who are we? European shitstick. How can you get a false reputation and provoke the collapse of the 3 Emperors alliance? What? And the German-Russian reinsurance treaty? Simple. Fool Doffa, get Wilhelm II, and the German-Russian alliance disintegrates. I worked overtime today. It took a while. Sorry. Chapter 58. Negotiation 2. This is not the end. The conflict between Britain and Russia is not only in history. The conflict between the two countries is not small at all. It lasted until 1907, before Russia was defeated in the Russian-Japanese War, and the bears were the primary enemy of the British. Since the late 1870s, the conflict between Britain and Russia in the Persian Gulf region has not stopped, and it is now in full swing. Due to the special geographical location of the Persian Gulf, it is the only way for the British to enter India by land, and it is also an ideal base for the British to enter the two rivers and expand to the Ottomans. The British Empire will not give up anyway. In the same way, the ambitious Harry Bear also has ideas about India and the Ottoman Empire, and naturally he is not willing to let the United Kingdom occupy the Persian Gulf and block the way forward. In the Persian Gulf region, the two countries are engaged in fierce competition over industries such as railways, loans, trade and even telegraphy. Don't be misled by myths and novels. Why participate in World War I, fight soy sauce, Rishanadashan takes control of the Persian Gulf, extracts oil, John Bull and Harry Bear will go all out. Then turn our attention to the grave of the empire, thanks to the American Empire, this famous Afghanistan that everyone is familiar with. From the second half of the 19th century, Harry Bears began to expand wildly in Central Asia and soon entered Afghanistan. Britain quit, and then there was British India. Immediately start interfering. Mountain is not easy to provoke. Why listen to you, John Bull? The Navy can't go ashore no matter how awesome it is. Then Afghanistan suffered 8 lifetimes of bad luck. 2 robbers invaded one after another, then threw themselves into the streets and were divided up. However, the conflict in the region continues. In 1891, looking at the world map, Mountain was all enemies from the word to the east. The ability to pull hatred was just now, and he was isolated by foreign powers diplomatically, forced to draw closer to a former enemy. Relations with the same diplomatically isolated France are heating up. Before, Bulgaria, which was not worth mentioning, and now the St. Petersburg government has also begun to pay attention. With the strategic focus of the Russian Empire moving eastward, St. Petersburg has decided to adopt a conservative strategy in Europe and a limited strategic contraction in the Balkans. Building allies is a good choice. In this international context, Ferdinand adopted a diplomatic strategy of being close to Russia, under the intention of Langing and his concubine. The two sides quickly reached the present. Ferdinand intends to cut through the mess quickly, and sign a peace treaty as soon as possible while Count Paul Shuvalov is in a daze, so as not to have too many dreams. Ferdinand did not have the calmness of the past, and said resolutely, "I asked you to come to a meeting today, not to discuss. So many meetings that should be discussed have already been discussed. I won't say more nonsense. I'm calling you here now to negotiate with Russia. The international situation is ever-changing, and now Russia is in a diplomatic stalemate. This is our best chance. After this village, there is no such shop. You must strive to sign the treaty as soon as possible, so as to obtain the greatest benefit for Bulgaria." In short, the sincerity of the Russian Empire this time is stronger than ever. Although the lion opens its mouth, let's talk. You are responsible for the specific details. I will personally participate in the main negotiation. Okay, let's break up if there is no objection. After speaking, Ferdinand ignored everyone still thinking and went back to rest. Today he is really too tired. Fooling people is not an easy job. That, the author of Fooling People is not good at it, usually belongs to the fooled lying on the 20-square-meter bed. Ferdinand tossed and turned, sleepless all night. Please forgive poverty for limiting my imagination looking and looking. It is cold and clear, miserable and miserable. When it is warm and cold, it is the most difficult to rest. The next morning, Ferdinand appeared with dark circles under his eyes. Proud of the superb makeup skills in the 19th century, he decided to choose a pure natural appearance. This time, Bulgaria is a good illustration of cutting the mess with a quick knife. I just visited Sofia, and Count Paul hurried to the negotiating table before he had time to adjust his status. Today's division of labor is very simple. Ferdinand is responsible for pretending to be coercive and finalizing the general direction. The specific content is the work of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In order to show the importance Bulgaria attaches to negotiations, The location was chosen at Ferdinand's palace. He wouldn't admit that he didn't want to ride that carriage because he was lazy! In order to speed up the decision, Ferdinand put forward constructive comments. Count Paul, if we continue to talk like this, it is estimated that you will still be sitting here next year today. I think St. Petersburg, like us, does not want to drag on indefinitely. Let's just negotiate in groups. Paul Shuvalov pondered for a moment, thinking in his heart, after the disintegration of the German-Russian reinsurance treaty, I have been left idle. If I don't show my results, I will not be regarded as an incompetent by the Tsar. Talking separately will not affect the result. If it's a big deal, just take a look. His Excellency the Grand Duke is right. For the friendship between our two countries, we really need to finalize the treaty as soon as possible. On behalf of the Russian Empire, I agree to negotiate in groups. There was a roar of applause in the venue, and everything was developing in a good direction. Russia believes that the most important military alliance Ferdinand signed with Nikolai before is now mainly in commercial trade. Ferdinand personally approached Count Paul Shuvalov to chat. No, it is to discuss the issue that Bulgaria is most concerned about, the introduction of population. He still resorted to the trick of flickering. Count Paul, as far as I know, the Russian Empire has developed rapidly in recent years. At the end of the 19th century, Russia was a glorious period. Its influence spread from Europe to Asia, radiating the world, and it was one of the main challengers of world hegemony. At that time, the hairy bear was full of confidence. Speaking of the Russian Empire, Count Paul Shuvalov became excited all of a sudden, and said with great joy, "Yes, Your Excellency, the great Russian Empire, under the blessing of God, is developing by leaps and bounds. It can be expected that in the near future, go beyond hating John Bull." Ferdinand also smiled cooperatively and complimented, "The Russian Empire is the successor of the ancient Roman Empire. It will only be a matter of time before it surpasses the United Kingdom. The future Europe and even the world will be led by your country." Paul Shuvalov has been a little bit floating, but in the end he is still the elite of the times, and he is not complacent. I sorted out my emotions a little, but I couldn't hide my pride and said, "Your Excellency, we still have a long way to go to surpass the UK. If Bulgaria joins, I believe this time will be shortened a lot." "Oh, Count Paul, you are wrong. We are already allies. I guess you have heard some wind." Ferdinand showed a proud expression. Paul Shuvalov was taken aback. It seemed that the secret contract really existed. Damn the foreign ministry. "Why don't you tell me the specifics? Could it be that I will leak it? By the way, I heard that in recent years, the number of immigrants from the Russian Empire in the Americas has increased greatly." "What's going on?" Ferdinand asked after changing his style. "Ask for tickets, ask for support." There is another chapter in the evening. It is estimated that it will be sent around 12 o'clock. Chapter 59, Russia and Bulgaria Migrant Alliance. Paul Shuvalov's face sank slightly. Of course he knew what was going on, the contradiction between the nobles and the commoners. The land annexation and the peasants went bankrupt and went out to seek a living. But he can't say that. Isn't this disgraceful to his own country? Do you touch your own face in the dark? Although it is already dark, Russia also wants to save face. He smiled responsively, and said arrogantly, "Your Excellency the Grand Duke does not know anything." Now the population of the Russian Empire has reached more than 120 million, and a small amount of population movement is normal. The implication is, don't make a fuss, there are only tens of thousands of people, and it is not worth mentioning for the Russian Empire. We're not like you Bulgaria, it's all small issues. Ferdinand smiled and understood. I thought to myself, this is not a little bit. From 1891 to 1901 alone, in just 10 years, more than 900,000 people left Europe from Russia. Ferdinand was drooling when he saw it. This was only counted, not recorded, and halfway dead. I don't know how many. The most important thing is that the languages and cultures of Russians and Bulgarians are similar, and they can basically communicate daily. Religious beliefs and folk customs, there are too many things in common, and it is easy to integrate. Count Paul, You know that Bulgaria lacks population, but your country is rich in human resources. In this regard, we can cooperate with each other," Ferdinand said embarrassingly. Paul Shuvalov understood what Ferdinand meant, and he didn't refuse. He thought it was just a trivial matter, a mere few pariahs, not worth mentioning. But as a diplomat, he still paused, so he said with difficulty, "Your Excellency, the Grand Duke means that he wants to attack immigrants, but they all leave by themselves. Our Russian Empire advocates freedom, and the government it's not good to force them." Ferdinand knew that things had come to fruition, and it was nothing more than seeking benefits, and said with a smile, "Of course I know that your country is a model of freedom and democracy, and you must not use coercion. As long as your government gives a little guidance, it will be fine. Anyway, they all want if you leave, you are not going anywhere." Bulgaria can also provide them with a travel fee, and Bulgaria is close to home, so it is convenient to go home to visit relatives. Paul Shuvalov waited and felt that it was almost the same. "Just accept it when you see it. The travel expenses provided by Bulgaria are certainly not issued to immigrants. As for how to use it, do you still think about it? Of course, it is the benefit of the nobles and bureaucrats. This time, it is estimated that many people will take their favors." "Okay, Your Excellency, as you wish." For the sake of friendship between Russia and Bulgaria, the Russian Empire is willing to facilitate your country on immigration issues. Ferdinand suppressed his excitement and said indifferently, "Count Paul, on behalf of Bulgaria, I thank you for your efforts for the friendship between the two countries. The people of the two countries will remember what you have done. It will remember that you worked hard." And then Stalin was so angry that he scolded his mother. The Soviet government directly listed Paul Shuvalov as the biggest traitor. He created a powerful Bulgaria and completely blocked the way for the Soviets to enter the Mediterranean. I don't know if Paul Shuvalov can be happy after knowing this news. On July 18, 1891, Ferdinand and Count Paul Shuvalov signed the Russian-Bulgarian Immigration-Related Matters Agreement at the Vienna Palace, known as the Russian-Bulgarian Immigration Alliance. The main content of the treaty: 1. Immigration activities between the Russian Empire and Bulgaria, all adhering to the principle of voluntary and unrestricted. 2. The Russian government provides necessary assistance for immigrants to Bulgaria, and Bulgaria pays the Russian government 10 rubles for each young immigrant and 5 rubles for the old and young. Addendum: Immigrants are civilians with no criminal records, family-based immigrants. Note: there is no detailed information. The currency value in 1897 is selected, 1 ruble 7.774 grams of gold. The signing of the Russia-Bulgarian Immigration-Related Matters Agreement was regarded by later generations as the establishment of the Russian-Bulgarian alliance. After the treaty was signed, the relationship between the two countries warmed up rapidly, and people-to-people exchanges, commercial trade, and political cooperation were strengthened. The year 1891 is considered by historians to be the turning year of Bulgaria, also known as the Year of the Rise. After the establishment of the Russian-Bulgarian Immigration Alliance, a large number of bankrupt peasants in Russia were forced to emigrate to Bulgaria, which laid the foundation for the development of Bulgaria. Since then, the Russian Empire has flowed into Bulgaria with a population of 100,000 every year. It is naturally accompanied by blood and rain. The later Russian director Stanislavski also lined up a film, A History of Blood and Tears of Russian Immigrants, exposing the cruel rule of Tsarist Russia. Of course, Bulgaria's official propaganda is different. It has produced a lot of documents to prove that the happy life of Russian immigrants in Bulgaria, as for blood and tears, only exists in Russia. Later, Ferdinand was considered by historians to be the greatest monarch in the modern world. He successfully completed the integration of nationalities and created a powerful Bulgaria. The sky is high and the birds fly, the sea is wide and the fish leaps. This adapted ancient poem very appropriately expresses Ferdinand's current mood. He didn't expect things to go so smoothly, and he achieved his goal easily. And there were still many trump cards that were not played. Fans of the authorities. Now everyone knows the importance of population to a country. But in the 19th century, The most important thing in the Russian Empire was people. Is it possible for Bulgaria to become stronger again? The Russians will definitely say, it depends on who you are compared with. Compared with the Balkan countries, it is very possible. Compared with the Russian Empire, who, except Ferdinand, was sure that World War I would break out, and that it would be so catastrophic that the Russian Empire would collapse. From the perspective of the people at that time, Bulgaria has already tied itself to the chariot of the Russian Empire by introducing a large number of Russian immigrants. The more Russians there are in the country, the stronger the pro-Russian faction will be. Maybe in the future, Bulgaria can be annexed without bloodshed. No matter how you look at it, there is no harm. After the treaty was passed to St. Petersburg, the Russian nobles sang praises, and they could make a fortune. Alexander III was getting old, and his energy was not as good as it was in the past, and under the public praise of the nobles, the wise and martial arts approved it. There are some ruthless people, and then consider whether to annex some more land, and which damn untouchables can be sold, not immigrants. It really kills two birds with one stone. If you take the land, you can make another fortune. It is conceivable that as long as Bulgaria can afford it, it is estimated that they will get it. The popularity of mechanization has greatly reduced the demand for farmers. Chapter 60, Layout of the Future. The biggest immigration problem was solved perfectly, and Ferdinand pulled out of the negotiation. After all, he is not engaged in diplomacy, and professional matters are better left to professionals. This does not mean that Ferdinand does not care about the subsequent negotiations. On the contrary, it is too concerned. Think about the historical Franco-Russian alliance. Just a military alliance took a long time. It took more than 3 years before and after. The Russia-Belgium alliance involves more aspects, and hundreds of treaties, large and small, need to be signed. Even for group negotiations, the most optimistic estimate is a few months. Ferdinand didn't have that much energy. It's now 1891, time is running out, it's time to start the layout. After the crossing, Ferdinand took over the family's intelligence organization and expanded it, which has now taken shape, at least in major European countries. They have set up strongholds to pass on news and guide a small wave of public opinion. But the so-called spy infiltration, Ferdinand can only be he. If you want to rely on them to inquire about confidential information, it is better to rely on family relationships. The Saxe-Coburg-Gotha dynasty, now the most glorious era, is the royal family of the Duchy of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha in Germany, Belgium, Portugal, Bulgaria, and the future Edward VII of the United Kingdom is also a member of its family. It is also one of the most powerful families in Europe and the world. If Ferdinand was to do business, these resources were sufficient. But Ferdinand knew that none of this was reliable. In the event of a conflict of interest, these relationships are unreliable. Wars in Europe have been civil wars between relatives since ancient times, and World War I is a typical example. The current intelligence organization has become increasingly unable to keep up with the needs of Bulgaria's development. As a history buff, Ferdinand knew how the Ming dynasty came to an end. Since Chongzhen ascended the throne, he abolished the factory and guards. The balance of power was lost, the emperor became blind, officials corrupted the common people, led to financial collapse, and finally perished. What does the factory guard do? If you just watch TV dramas and listen to the public figures blow in falsehoods, then they're hawks and dogs, running rampant in the world. It is a sharp weapon for the eunuch's political chaos, and it is the chief culprit of the demise of the Ming dynasty. Anyone who knows history knows that the responsibilities of the factory guards are equivalent to the current ICAC. They only target officials, regardless of the common people. Anyway, no matter how much they toss, the unfortunate ones are the bureaucrats. How well the work is done, no evaluation is made, but no matter what, it can't be cancelled. Well, the agency to supervise officials is gone, so what are you afraid of? Hurry up and make money. Later, Chongzhen found out that something was wrong and activated the factory guards again. Unfortunately, it was too late, and the bureaucrats had already prepared. Ferdinand naturally had to learn a lesson. and of course the intelligence organization had to hold it tightly in his hands. Bulgaria has missed the best opportunity to expand in history and lost the opportunity to rise. Of course, Ferdinand has to learn a lesson. Now your main job is to speed up the infiltration into Ottoman Turkey. I don't care if you are coercing, enticing or threatening to kidnap. You must open the situation as soon as possible. Ferdinand invited Fuad to say seriously, yes, Your Excellency. We have already established a stronghold in Ottoman before. I will recruit more elite personnel, speed up the layout, and open the situation as soon as possible. Fuad said confidently, well, not only that. Infiltrate Greece, Romania, Serbia, Montenegro, Romania. Ferdinand said cautiously, don't worry, Your Excellency. Our intelligence department will do our best to complete it. Fuad's face changed slightly. He pondered for a while, but still gave Ferdinand a satisfactory answer. Seeing Fuad's affirmative answer, Ferdinand said a little embarrassedly, not only that, you have to send people to North Africa, where the British and French forces are lurking, Orange Free Tide. Fuad stared at Ferdinand in a stunned manner. His heart was already broken. I thought to myself, the Grand Duke's thinking is too jumpy. Infiltration into the Ottomans and the Balkans is understandable. East Africa, South Africa, which two other republics? Who knows what the hell? Ferdinand seems to have noticed the strangeness of Fuad, and he also knew his request, which seemed a bit strange at the time. Without explaining, he asked directly, Fuad, what's the problem with you? Fuad seemed to realize that he had lost his way, and hurriedly said, no, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, I have no objection. Ferdinand nodded with satisfaction. The head of the intelligence organization, don't need to ask why, just follow the order. How long does it take for the intelligence department to complete my request above? Ferdinand thought for a while and said, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, the most optimistic estimate will take about 10 years, mainly in Africa. It is still blank for us, without any foundation. Ferdinand said solemnly, no, before 1896, your intelligence department must complete the task. It seemed that the request was too much, and he added, in Africa, as long as you can make sure that you can hold one or two big events, you don't have to think about long-term lurking. The European part of the Ottoman Empire must have detailed information, including anti-government forces, and the Asian part can be relaxed. The Balkan countries can plan a few big events. Your Excellency, please rest assured, our intelligence department promises to complete the task. Fuad thought for a while, and after lowering the standard, if he worked hard, he could still complete it, and immediately assured, well, next, your intelligence department's funding will be doubled. If you need anything, you can come to me. But this mission must be completed. Ferdinand said cautiously, yes. Fuad said with certainty. Ferdinand has long formulated regulations. Intelligence organizations are divided into primary infiltration, which is only responsible for collecting public information or guiding a wave of public opinion. Intermediate infiltration, which can engage in 2 or 3 major activities, such as assassination of terrorist attacks. Comprehensive infiltration. Long-term infiltration, deep into the place. At present, only Bulgaria has completed the highest level of lurking. Most of the other areas are primary, and some areas are intermediate. After sending Fuad, Ferdinand turned his attention back to the country, and he had to be hard on himself. The strength of a country lies in its own core and other aids. Now, only Ferdinand knew that in 1897 the Balkans would usher in a major change. The Ottoman Empire is about to face a situation of chaos. What if Ferdinand doesn't take advantage of it? In parallel time and space, the Ottoman Empire has decayed, and the national contradictions have become increasingly intensified. Under the brutal oppression of the Turkish government, the Armenians began to rebel against the Sultan's rule. Between 1894 and 1897, a series of massacres of Armenians took place in Turkey, killing more than 100,000 people. In June 1896, the Armenians launched an uprising and on August 26 captured the Ottoman Bank of Constantinople. However, due to the lack of weapons and ammunition for the insurgent army, it quickly failed under the suppression of the Sudanese army. This is only the largest of them. and other ethnic minorities have also erupted in uprisings of various sizes during this period. Both failed quickly due to lack of organization. Seemingly seeing the weakness of the Ottoman Empire, in 1897, there was an uprising in Crete, Greece got involved, and the Rare Earth War broke out. The Greeks were not mistaken, Osman was indeed terminally ill, but unfortunately he overestimated his strength. Under the conditions of insufficient preparation, the attack on Turkey was hastily launched, which was quickly defeated, and the Turkish army had been attacked all the way to Attica. Greece was forced to concede defeat and truce under the intervention of foreign powers. What was Bulgaria doing at this time in history? Of course, they are busy with political construction. Everyone is fighting for power and profit. Who cares about foreign countries? These issues are still being resolved later. Now the focus of Bulgaria is still development. The opening of the Sorbu Railway also means that Bulgaria's heavy industry can start. In a few months, the branch line to the Balkan mountains will also be able to pass through. At that time, iron ore in the Balkans can be continuously transported by rail. What troubled Ferdinand was that Bulgaria lacked coking coal for steelmaking and had to import it from Russia, which would be controlled by others in the future. This has strengthened Ferdinand's determination to win the Macedonia region, and the mineral resources alone are worth the ticket price. After winning the Macedonia region, in the next 2 decades, the main mineral resources of Bulgaria's industrialization can be solved. Ask for votes. Ask for support. No one refuses to come. Chapter 61, Planning to build a steel plant. Ferdinand thought it was time to start the steel mill. It can be expected that for a long time in the future, this is all money-losing goods. Of course, this kind of major project related to the people's livelihood of the country must be undertaken by the government in person. Otherwise, how can it be called nationalism? Alice, tell Constantine to come. Ferdinand. Iron and steel plants cannot be built overnight. If you don't see Hanyang iron and steel plant, it is a lesson in blood. The difference is 1,000 miles away. In 1890, Zhang Zidong sent an engineer to visit Day and discovered a large open-pit iron ore, so he began to prepare for the construction of the Hanyang iron and steel plant. Due to lack of professional knowledge, they ignored the engineer's requirement that if you want to build a steel plant, you must first test the quality of iron, stone and coal, and then determine what kind of steel to make. From the start of the horse, the equipment was purchased in imitation of the British steel plant. The factory was placed in Hanyang, and as a result, the transportation distance of raw materials was greatly increased, the cost was greatly increased, and the product lost its competitiveness. When Ferdinand in his previous life saw this, he shook his head and sighed. Asia's #1 steel plant was so crippled by bureaucrats. In this time and space, the Hanyang iron and steel plant has also been launched, and it is still the hanging sample. Ferdinand was also going to remind it, but it turned out that the Big Apple was still full of arrogance. Except for Britain, France, and Russia, they still paid no attention to other countries. Bulgaria or something, the treatment is not as good as that of North Korea, and there is no status. Talking is tantamount to farting, and Ferdinand is simply too lazy to care. The specific details, Ferdinand is also unclear. However, he is still clear about the 6 points that everyone knows in the future. 1. As close as possible to the origin of raw materials. 2. There are sufficient water sources nearby, preferably close to the river. Of course, based on this, the site selection of the steel mill should be built in the downstream and downwind directions of the city where it is located, and away from residential areas. 3. There must be convenient transportation, ports, railways, etc. 4. There must be sufficient supply of local resources, such as iron ore, coal, etc. 5. The plant should save land and not occupy or occupy less fertile land. 6. The plant should take into account the local natural and geographical environment. Avoid building plants in the following areas: A. Seismic fault zones. B. Level 3 self-weight collapsible loess areas with large land thickness. C. Susceptible to floods, debris flows, mountainous areas prone to natural disasters such as landslides. In a large range, Ferdinand can lock it, And the location of the Bulgarian steel plant in later generations is not bad. It's definitely not possible to just copy it. The productivity is different, and what is suitable for the future may not be suitable for the present. The specific location still depends on the engineer to select the site, and the layman directs the expert, and most of them will not have any good results. Respect the Archduke. Constantine greets you. Constantine put his left hand on his chest and bowed to Ferdinand. Well, how is the Constantine negotiation going? Ferdinand asked with concern. Your Majesty, everything is going well, Constantine replied happily, showing that he was very satisfied. Well, we still have to hurry up, sign a treaty as soon as possible, and get what we want in our hands. If we encounter difficulties, we can spend money on it. We can still pay for the cost of feeding a few officials. Ferdinand: yes, Your Excellency, we will sign the treaty as soon as possible, Constantine assured. Ferdinand looked at the high-spirited Constantine and said, I came to you today, mainly to discuss the problem of the steel plant. Constantine was surprised and said excitedly, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, does anyone want to invest in a steel plant? That would be great. At present, there are only a few steel workshops in Bulgaria, and they have to import abroad every year, wasting our precious foreign exchange resources. You can rest assured that our government will definitely provide the most favorable conditions, free land, and tax-free. Ferdinand looked at Constantine, who was spitting out, and he didn't know him. When did I say that someone wanted to invest in a steel plant? Which idiot capitalist would invest in a Bulgarian steel plant at this time? It's completely Hegemony. Even if all the government is exempt from tax, can't get the cost back. Mr. Constantine, calm down. No one wants to work in a Bulgarian steel plant. Capitalists are not philanthropists. Ferdinand said dissatisfiedly. Hearing Ferdinand's words, Constantine knew that he had misunderstood, and explained a little embarrassedly, Oh, sorry, Your Excellency, the Grand Duke, I lost my temper. I just thought that some idiot was going to invest in the steel plant, so I was a little overexcited. Ferdinand smiled and said, Really, Mr. Constantine, you are thinking too much. The steel plant must be built, and it is the same whether the land and taxes are paid or not. I plan to be the government to take the blame this time! Constantine was shocked, and after a moment of silence, he said, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, is it too much for our government to fund the establishment? At present, the steel plants all over the world are built by capitalists. I am afraid that it will destroy the free market economy and cause unnecessary problems. Pickle. Ferdinand seemed to have expected it long ago, and said with a smile, What is a free market economy? It's not like that. If we don't invest, it is estimated that in another 20 years, there will not be a decent steel factory in Bulgaria. As for the precedents, aren't they all created by people? And in today's world, we are not only building state-owned steel plants, aren't we also building the Big Apple Empire in the East? Constantine was a little confused, so he was persuaded. He had heard of the Big Apple Empire in the East. It was said to be a foodie empire, and even its name had food. He didn't know if he didn't build a steel factory, since the Grand Duke said there was one. Oh, Your Excellency, the establishment of a state-owned steel plant will undermine free competition in the market. I am afraid that many people will object. This is simple. The government can release the news first, then announce that if there's a capitalist who can build a large factory with an annual output of 1 million tons of steel within 5 years, the plan will be cancelled, and hobby capitalists are welcome to sign up. We can also give them tax exemptions. By the way, if the task cannot be completed, then the industrialization process of Bulgaria will be delayed, and you will be responsible. Ferdinand made a sinister note. If anyone in the outside world saw Ferdinand's conspiracy, they would definitely say, crazy. If it is the 21st century, with an annual output of 1 million steel, it is a township enterprise, a small and micro enterprise that has been shut down. But here is the 19th century. In 1891, only France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the United States, and Russia, which produced more than 1 million steel per year, were the only countries. Is this possible? Ferdinand can say with great certainty that it is impossible. Even if he made his own investments, he couldn't do it. If you want to object, just come. Don't be afraid of being scolded as shit. You can come out and try. With an annual output of 1 million tons of steel, it can also be ranked 6th in the world. Can the public object to such a big temptation? If it is completed, if Ferdinand can be shameless, Bulgaria can still be an industrial country. And by the way, get a hat of a foreign power to wear. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Start the Steel Plant. On September 15, 1891, the front page of the Bulgarian Daily published the draft plan for the Bulgarian state-owned steel plant. The Bulgarian media is happy, starting from Nikolai's questioning of Sofia, followed by the Russia-Paul negotiation. Various topics continued, and the newspapers were sold out of stock. Now the government has thrown out the steel plant plan. The government has come forward to make plans, and the Bulgarian people have become accustomed to it. Since the earliest 5-year plan, the government has never been idle, and has been constantly tossing and turning. But it's amazing to see what's inside. The government invests in the establishment of a steel plant, which is planned to be put into operation within 3 years, and a large-scale steel plant with an annual output of 270,000 tons of iron, 140,000 tons of steel, and 90,000 tons of steel, totaling 500,000 tons. It instantly attracted the attention of the public and detonated public opinion. There are those who support and those who oppose, each expressing their own opinions and arguing endlessly. The opposition believes that the government is talking empty words, and it is impossible to realize it. The reason is that the countries with an annual output of more than 500,000 tons of steel in the world, in addition to the 6 major foreign countries, Britain, France, Germany, Russia, the United States, Austria, Hungary, Belgium and Luxembourg, and then disappeared. Some people may be wondering, what about our Italian profit? After all, it is also a European power. It is a pity that the Italian steel industry is such a rubbish. It has just started, with less than 50,000 tons of slag. A Bulgarian steel plant has increased its production capacity to the top 10 in the world. It is a joke. And does Bulgaria need that much steel? This is more than Italy. It is a complete waste of money. It is better to invest in other industries. If the Bulgarians of later generations saw it, they would definitely say, what is more than Italy? For a period of time in history, Bulgarian steel production has surpassed Italy. Those who support it believe that no matter whether it can be done or not, it must be done. Steel is the foundation of a strong country. There is always a dream, just in case it comes true. Oh, the destruction of free competition in the market that Constantine is worried about. No one cares at all. The capitalists said that we are not stupid, we are destined to lose money, and we will rob it when our brains are flooded. Let the government do what it wants. We are also patriotic and will not oppose a strong country. Then, in the hustle and bustle, it just went by without anyone taking to the streets to protest. It is estimated that no one dares. The last group of people who protested in the streets, and the road construction on the construction site. They violated the Bulgarian public security management regulations and affected the normal life of citizens. Protests are allowed under Bulgarian law, but they must not interfere with the lives of others. It's like saying that protests and demonstrations should go to places where there is no one. Whether the steel plant can be built, Ferdinand can say with certainty, there is absolutely no problem. As for the production capacity, I didn't see that it said put into production within 3 years. As for when it will reach 500,000 tons, wait for that, sooner or later. We also have Mr. Constantine, who is in a very bad mood now, and here comes the trouble. A large number of experts and scholars came to the door and asked about the progress of the steel plant, expressing that they could help voluntarily. It was fine at first, but he was still moved and answered patiently. There were too many people behind him, and he had a headache, and some even came to urge him to hurry up every 3 days. Constantine really wanted to say, Progress. I haven't seen the newspaper advertisement. Is it just a draft? It's just to test everyone's reaction. How does I know it's going well? Oh, why are you all here? Scholars in chemical physics. This can be counted. It's related. Mechanical major. This can be your counterpart. And you are right to pay attention. What are you studying? Art. Oh, thank you for that. We don't need you. What? You're not kidding. You are a linseed oil equipment manufacturer. What are you doing? It was just established yesterday. In order to. Okay, the door is over there. Walk slowly without giving it away. All kinds of messy people came to the door, and Constantine had to close the door to thank the guests. If you want to help voluntarily, you can send someone to register and find you if you need it. If you want to take the opportunity to make a fortune, those who sell equipment can get out of the way. I don't even know that Bulgaria has such an awesome machinery factory. These are just minor issues. The key is the management of the steel plant. And what about the skilled workers? It's no use hollowing out those small workshops in Bulgaria. Seeing the government's blind actions, Ferdinand decisively stopped. What should I do? There is no good way. There is a stupid way. Learn from Hanyang Iron and Steel Plant. Directly send people to study. Just started to invite British technical engineers. No way. Who said that in these years, the British steel industry is the most developed? A Hanyang Iron and Steel Plant, Zhangzidong spent 5.8 million taels of silver. At that time, silver had not depreciated greatly. Unfortunately, due to the reckless actions of the bureaucrats, it never broke out of full production capacity, and he was still the #1 steel factory in Asia. The steel plant currently under construction in Bulgaria has a similar total investment, which is about 7 million leva. But the production capacity is greatly exceeded. Anyway, the loan contracts signed by Stam's cabinet with the United Kingdom that year stipulated that British goods must be purchased. The loan of more than 50 million levs is being used right now. Small countries are miserable. They clearly promised to get loans, but they can't get cash, and they have to pay interest. The loan contract signed by the Stam government is not fundamentally different from that of the Big Apple borrowing foreign debt. The manpower problem is solved, and the next step is to purchase equipment. Ferdinand originally planned to go out in person, but unfortunately, considering the diplomatic influence, he was negotiating with Russia and had to give up. This purchase is not only for steel plant equipment, but also industrial equipment required by other industries in Bulgaria. Due to the Industrial Revolution, technology has developed rapidly in recent years, and many factory equipment needs to be updated. Ferdinand simply asked the government to come forward and organize the capitalists who need to purchase in the country to buy together, which is also convenient for bargaining. Because of the huge amount of purchases, the government has to send someone with a lot of weight. Ferdinand could no longer go, and this glorious and arduous task fell on Chekhov. A super team led by cabinet members and assembled most of Bulgaria's industry elites was formed. The first stop is London, and then we have to go to Vienna. It is the uncle who owes money. This sentence only applies to future generations, and Bulgaria has no such confidence. And what's even worse is that the money is given in installments, and the interest is paid from start to finish. Bulgaria has only gotten a fraction of the hundreds of millions of leva borrowed. No way. The foreign powers at the end of the 19th century were so overbearing. Mr. Chekhov, your task is very important this time. In addition to purchasing equipment, you have to dig as many engineers as possible. Ferdinand said with concern. Your Excellency, don't worry, I swear in the name of God that this matter will be done well. Chekhov assured. Chapter 63, Check and Balance. After sending the delegation away, Ferdinand turned his attention to the country. It's time to get ready. With congressional elections reopening next year, this is the Shen promise he made by himself. Of course he can't go back on it. Now in Bulgaria, Constantine does not have the status of prime minister, but he is doing the work of prime minister. If there is no accident, he will be the new prime minister after the parliamentary election next year. Ferdinand didn't want the appearance of power. Checks and balances were imperative. Chekhov has ruled it out. He's an honest man. Let him do things with peace of mind. Let's play politics and forget it. Without Ferdinand's support, Who would take him seriously now in the government? Ferdinand thought of a person, Eugene Ivanov, the current governor of Fraka. He is also a very ambitious person. This is not the point. The key is that he is still very capable. Before, Ferdinand planned to drop him to the Ministry of Agriculture to take over the job of James Ferdinand. Due to Nikolai's visit, the alliance between Russia and Bulgaria was advanced. Ferdinand was too busy, so he was delayed. It can now be dropped. Looking at the political landscape of Bulgaria, smart people all know that the interim cabinet is just a decoration, completely covered by Ferdinand. 3 cabinet members. James has left his business and went to do scientific research. Screment is a religious person, and he has never been involved in affairs, which is optional. The only normal one is Chekhov, the younger brother of Ferdinand. As an excess, the temporary cabinet only needs to be obedient. And it doesn't matter what waste materials are used. It is also convenient for Ferdinand to take power and promote his cronies. For example, when it comes to promoting high-ranking government officials, Ferdinand can make a decision without restraint. Ferdinand promoted Constantine before, and now he wants to promote Eugene Ivanov. No one objected, which would have been unthinkable under Stam's cabinet. It is no longer needed, and Ferdinand's position has been consolidated over the past few years. The cabinet at the back must do things independently. Once the second 5-year plan starts, there will be too many things to be busy with. Ferdinand didn't want to die from exhaustion, nor did he intend to provide soil for the powerful ministers to survive. Cabinet expansion is imperative. Historically, the Constantine cabinet was known as the most energetic cabinet in Bulgaria, and it was just right for them to implement the second 5-year plan. Then, our comrade Eugene Ivanov was knocked unconscious by a pie. In order to check and balance, his position is not only a Minister of Agriculture, but also the Minister of Industry. Looking at the fate letter, Eugene Ivanov couldn't believe it. As the Minister of Agriculture, he knew this, and now there is another Minister of Industry, and then he came to the palace in a daze. Eugene Ivanov, we meet again. Ferdinand joked. Yes, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, it is a pleasure to meet you again. Eugene Ivanov said excitedly. Ferdinand put away his smile and said cautiously, well, yes, it's not a good job to bring you to Sofia this time. The Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Industry are the two busiest departments in Bulgaria in the future, and they are also the most important. 2 departments. Ferdinand's cautious tone frightened Eugene Ivanov, and he reacted quickly. Is this a test? If it's not a good job, is there a better position? Is it hinting at the cabinet? The Prime Minister doesn't need to think about it. All Bulgarians know that Constantine has already made a decision. A cabinet member's the location is also very attractive, at least for me. Eugene Ivanov immediately expressed his determination in a firm tone. Please rest assured, Your Excellency, I promise in the name of God that I will do the task you gave me, or let me go to hell. This was the first time that Ferdinand had met someone who had made such a determination to him. He also knows that people like Eugene Ivanov have low morals and will do anything to achieve their goals. But this kind of villain is often the most used by leaders in the workplace. Ferdinand was no exception. At least this kind of villain will implement his orders 100%. After listening to Eugene Ivanov's assurance, Ferdinand said with a smile, well, very good. I hope you can always maintain your current heart and serve Bulgaria wholeheartedly. Don't worry, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, I will do it. Eugene Ivanov answered affirmatively. Ferdinand nodded, expressed his approval, and then said, well, the focus of your next work is on agriculture. You know that for some reason, the Bulgarian government currently holds 35% of the country's total. I want you to gradually promote mechanized operations on this land and promote agricultural reform. Not only that, you have to organize farmers to build water conservancy projects and promote the cultivation of commercial crops, etc. In short, it is your job to increase grain production and increase farmers' income. Eugene Ivanov was a little stunned. Shouldn't he focus on developing industry? Why is my work focused on agriculture? If he was an actor, he would definitely say, the director's script is wrong. After confirming that Ferdinand was serious, Weijing Ivanlov quickly adjusted his mind and said, "Please rest assured, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, I will focus on agriculture and strive to complete it as soon as possible." Task. Ferdinand smiled with satisfaction, and then said, "Of course, you can't relax in the industry. The main project at present is the steel that is about to be launched. You can now organize experts to conduct prospecting, and then select the site for the steel plant. In this regard, we all listen to the experts." Weijing Ivanlov pondered for a few seconds. It seems that he has a lot of tasks. But the heavier the task, the more I can withdraw my value. He assuredly said, "Don't worry, Your Excellency, I will definitely complete the task." Ferdinand looked at Weijing Ivanlov and said, "Well, I'm waiting for your good news." In fact, there are still many things in the Ministry of Industry, but now it is basically Constantine who is supervising and doing a good job. Ferdinand didn't want to make any extras now, so he didn't mention it. Weijing Ivanlov is also a smart person. He knows that if he is a newcomer, if he immediately confronts the future prime minister, he will definitely have no good fruit to eat. It's better to wait. Anyway, after the general election next year, Constantine, the prime minister, must also decentralize! After leaving the palace, Weijing Ivanlov happily went to the government to report. It seems that there is no higher position in the government department than Weijing Ivanlov. Chekhov was on a visit, Skriment was in the church every day, and James Bass was the laboratory. Other high-ranking government officials are either equal or lower. Even Constantine and him are only equal. In the short term, he only needs to be responsible to Ferdinand, which is really good news for Weijing. Chapter 64, Chekhov and number 039:S trip to London. In 1891, the British Empire was still at its peak, and its economy and culture were in their heyday. The whole world is shrouded in the shadow of the British Empire. Although the bear still considers itself a challenger, France is making small moves in East Africa, and Germany's quiet activities in South Africa are still crushed to death. As in the same London minor, Britain's greatest wealth undoubtedly belonging to honest laborers. See thousands of people meet very happy. Forget it, let's omit it. It's a nice little tune, but the translation becomes nondescript. During this period, London was the most prosperous city in the world, and the citizens of London were sharing the prosperity and hope brought by the Industrial Revolution in the first half-century. People's diets have also changed. In addition to potatoes and bread, beef and mutton have also entered people's tables, and milk has become a necessities of life. Housing conditions have also improved. Soap prices have become cheaper, houses have become tidy, and individuals have become more hygienic. People live and work in peace and contentment, and the increase in wages allows people to strive for decency in addition to daily expenses. All in all, everything is going for the better. In Chekhov's eyes, London, as the capital of the British Empire, is the dream capital in the hearts of the world's elites. On October 28, 1891, the Bulgarian delegation headed by Chekhov arrived in London, the dream city. Thick smoke filled the air, and it felt a bit like a dream. Oh, it's a pity that there is a bit of weird smell mixed with it, which ruins this beautiful scenery. Proud of the good relations between the two countries, the Chekhov delegation came to make a big purchase this time, so the treatment was good. British Foreign Secretary Robert Arthur Gascoigne Sissy hosted a welcome banquet for them. There were quite a few people attending the banquet. The British business community all sent representatives. Well, Chekhov found that he thought too much, and he was not as important as he thought. Although a lot of people come, but most of them are capitalists. The goal is very clear as the order. The charm of money is infinite. This kind of life is really not suitable for Chekhov, nor is it suitable for everyone in the delegation. They had never seen such a scene before, so they could only be cautious, for fear of saying the wrong thing and being laughed at. A group of Bulgarian elites instantly turned into bumpkins at the banquet. Although it may be due to the gentleman's demeanor, no one said anything, but the contempt in his bones is still inadvertently revealed in his eyes. Chekhov, the honest man, waited until the end of the dinner, then dragged his exhausted body back to the hotel, unable to sleep all night. Early in the morning, The fog is white and damp, after which it becomes more like smoke. Small particles in the air mix with soot, making your breath dry and tingling. At some intersections, traffic was completely blocked and people had to ditch some buses and vans. Chekhov's London dream was shattered, and neither the flamboyant high society nor the bad air was acceptable to him. London's smog not only damages human health, but also threatens buildings. The soot and the smog can blacken the building. The smog contains a large amount of sulfide, which is acidic when combined with the water vapor, forming an acid fog that is lethal to the building, which can gradually erode the building. In order to combat smog, the British have also specially developed anti-corrosion building materials. In fact, the smog in London lasted until after World War II before it was managed. The reasons are also very strange: the blockade in Germany, the lack of fuel in London. The British government adopted a strict rationing system, controlled coal burning, and promoted electric energy. Far more than one Chekhov has broken dreams. It is difficult for anyone who has been to London in the 19th century to have a good impression. No matter what the weather, work must continue. In order to leave London as soon as possible, the delegation exerted all its energy to negotiate with the capitalists. Robert Arthur Gascoigne Sissy, the big guy, except for showing up at the welcome banquet, he no longer pays attention to Chekhov and others. No way, who said Bulgaria has a low sense of existence. The cabinet ministers of Bulgaria are not yet qualified to be personally received by the foreign ministers of the British Empire. If you change the cabinet ministers of Germany, France, Russia and other countries, the treatment will be different. Since the British inventor Bessemer invented the low-cost converter steelmaking method in the 1850s, Britain has gradually become the world's steel center, and the steel industry has also become an important contributor to the British economy. Chekhov's purpose is to first go to the British steel factory to do a field inspection. The results of the iron ore test in Bulgaria have come out. He needs to customize a complete set of equipment according to the actual situation. Although the government's slogan is very loud, the annual output of steel is 500,000 tons. The equipment capacity that Chekhov ordered this time was much smaller, with a capacity of only 100,000 tons. Mr. Vic Thomas, we have checked the equipment of your company, and the quality is very good, but unfortunately, he is not suitable for us, Chekhov said with a regretful expression. Mr. Chekhov, you must know that the machines in our factory are the best in the world. Vic Thomas introduced hard. However, it is also the most expensive in the world. Although your company's product has the highest tapping rate in terms of production capacity, it also has the highest maintenance cost. We want to combine cost-effectiveness, and using your machines requires too much coke. Chekhov dismantles Vic Thomas. Obviously, the Bulgarian delegation was treated as a fat sheep. The integrity of the capitalists does not need to be considered, and Vic Thomas has no heart burden. If there is no accompanying professional, it is estimated that Chekhov has been pitted by Vic Thomas now. Like all hot-blooded intellectuals, Chekhov likes to pursue the best, the most advanced, often ignoring the price-performance ratio. Gorgeous. This is the evaluation of Vic Thomas's equipment by peers, and there is no buyer at all in the UK. Of course, Vic Thomas himself knows better that this equipment is only a test product, and many technical difficulties have not been overcome. In order to avoid the patents of Bessemer converters and Siemens Martin open hearth furnaces, the Vic Thomas factory opened up its brains and planned to develop more advanced technologies, but later found that it could not be done. The experimental products developed in the early stage cannot be wasted, and they are all used, so this set of equipment is added. The hoist is used to send the materials to the top of the blast furnace, and belt conveyors, trains and hand-crank trail cars are used to move the furnace and main rolling span. These technological advances have greatly increased blast furnace output, while maintenance costs have also risen significantly due to immature technology. Vic Thomas seemed to be used to being rejected, and continued to fight for it. Mr. Chekhov, I am very sincere, and it is easy to negotiate the price. It is only slightly higher than the same kind, but the production capacity has also been greatly improved. But Chekhov didn't take it seriously, saying, what about maintenance costs? At present, The increased production capacity and the increased cost are almost the same, and over time, it may continue to increase. But we are in stock. Mr. Chekhov, if you want to order equipment, it will not be completed until the end of next year at the earliest, plus commissioning time, and then shipped to Bulgaria for installation. You will have to wait at least 3 years before production. Vic Thomas: poor picture. That's right. If it wasn't for the spot, Chekhov would have stopped talking to him long ago. Bulgaria has no experience in building large steel plants and underestimates many aspects, including equipment orders. Unless Chekhov learns from Zhang Zidong and doesn't know if it is a match or not, he will force it on the horse directly. But now he already knows that the quality of the ore must be taken into account in the factory equipment, otherwise the product qualification rate will be low and doubtful. The Vic Thomas equipment may not be the best choice, but it is the most suitable for Bulgaria at the moment. Now that the showdown has been reached, it is natural to bargain. I omit hundreds of thousands of words when discussing the price. The author is afraid that he will be scolded for writing this. In the end, Chekhov bought the full set of equipment for £2 million. It includes 6 large factories, including pig iron factory, hem steel factory, rail factory, iron cargo factory, and wrought iron factory, as well as a small factory such as machine factory, iron factory, and fish fillet hook and nail factory. The procurement of supporting facilities for the steel plant is just a small episode. There are also many industries that have signed large and small procurement contracts, and it is not possible to take advantage or suffer. Bulgaria got the industrial equipment it needed for its development, and the British capitalists made a fortune from it. The entire purchase contract added up to a total of £8 million, which caused a sensation in London at the time. Chapter 65, The Birth of the Rose Group. Chekhov was busy in London, and Ferdinand was not idle either. Didn't you plan to develop the rose industry before? Now you can start. Let's start with the traditional. Anyway, rose essential oil is not worried about buying. Everyone knows that women's money is the best to earn, and this sentence applies to any time and space. Main benefits of rose essential oil: 1. Can improve menstrual pain. 2. Enhance women's self-attraction. 3. Shape the graceful curves of women. 4. Assist gastrointestinal digestive function. 5. Improve constipation symptoms. 6. Improve women's self-confidence. With so many effects, do you still have to worry about not being able to sell it? At least Ferdinand didn't worry about the sales. In addition to medicinal and edible, it can also be used to make high-end perfumes. The key is that the yield of rose essential oil has never been higher. No way. Who made the extraction ratio so low? There is no technical difficulty. The distillation equipment of rose essential oil mainly includes distillation kettle, re-steaming column, gooseneck, condenser, and oil-water separator. Apart from the relatively large amount of manpower required, there is basically no difficulty. Nothing more than repeated distillation, redistillation. As long as the picking technology is used, there is no need to worry about this. Bulgaria has a history of production for hundreds of years, and the old farmers in the countryside are very aware of it. That's right. How could Ferdinand let go of such a profitable business? He did what he said. He remembered the most famous rose sanctuary in later generations, Kazanlak Rose Valley, and he chose it without thinking. Ferdinand sat lazily on the teacher's chair and shouted loudly, "Alice, ask Ferenc to come and see me." After that, he continued to play with his beloved tea set, which is said to be from Rukilnan Song dynasty. This was the last time Ferdinand came back from Buckingham Palace. As for true or false, let's call it true. The people below should not have the guts to lie to Queen Victoria. Of course, it is not ruled out that sending the British to appreciate the level of appreciation is a second knife. Just like Ferdinand, there is no way to tell the truth from the fake. If it was a previous life, with such a set of treasures, Ferdinand must have carefully kept it, and he was afraid of breaking it in his hands. Now that's just an ordinary set of tea sets, and the cultural relics of the Eastern world are not worth much at the moment. Although Ferdinand didn't collect it carefully, the name of his love for Oriental cultural relics spread and he received many such gifts. Ferdinand didn't have the time to identify the true and false, Anyway, no matter what is true or false, it will be a cultural relic after 100 or 80 years. After a while, Alice interrupted Ferdinand's plan and said softly, "Your Excellency the Grand Duke, Mr. Ferenc is here." Ferdinand woke up from his fantasy, patted his forehead, paused for a few seconds, and said, "Oh, let him in." Alice withdrew with a smile, and Franz walked in a moment later. "Your Excellency the Grand Duke is well." Ferdinand put down the teacup, looked at Franzi and asked, "Well, does Ferranti remember the rose oil I mentioned to you?" Franz didn't hesitate, and immediately replied, "Of course, there are still sales in our Volvo department store." Ferdinand said casually, "If I decide to enter the processing and manufacturing of rose oil now, how difficult is it?" Franz answered his own question. "Difficulty? No difficulty. Bulgarian rose essential oil has been processed for hundreds of years, and there is no technical difficulty. However, this is a labor-intensive industry, and the profit may not be optimistic." Ferdinand nodded with a smile, and then asked, "What if we could make technological innovations to increase the extraction efficiency tenfold?" Franz was startled, and then replied, "How is this possible? Don't say that the Grand Duke has increased it tenfold. Even if it is doubled, it is worth our great investment." Ferdinand explained, "An additional process is to soak the roses with 15% salt for fermentation, and then distill. By doing this, on the one hand, the roses will not rot and deteriorate, on the other hand, the oil in the flowers can be diffused, and the production of essential oils can also be increased. Of course, the quality of rose essential oil extracted in this way will decrease. We can divide it into different grades from the essential oil extracted by traditional techniques. Basically, the process has not changed much. Theoretically, the extraction rate of essential oils can be increased tenfold." "Ferenc, how long will it take you to come up with a feasible plan?" Franz thought for a moment, and then said cautiously, "Your Excellency the Grand Duke, we need to organize people to do a comparative experiment, accurately calculate the growth rate of production, and determine how much the quality has dropped. After a comprehensive analysis of the international market, to come up with a plan." Ferdinand nodded with satisfaction, thinking to himself, "Ferenc has grown up, if he had come up with a plan in a hurry, and then asked where his method came from. Well, you dared to do it. By the way, I have already chosen the Kozenlik Rose Valley where the roses are grown. That place has always been a world of roses." Franz was slightly surprised, but said immediately, "Okay, Your Excellency, I know what to do." Ferdinand responded, "Yeah." He went on to say, "Not only that, Bulgaria is now full of roses, and we can also do peripheral development. For example, the petals can be made into tea, or processed into beverages, and even rose biscuits can be processed with flour. Try." Surroundingly, Ferenc was often influenced by Ferdinand's surprising remarks, and was also stunned. In the eyes of ordinary people, in addition to being processed into rose essential oil, roses can only be used as gifts between lovers. As a result, Ferdinand suddenly came up with so many ideas, which are theoretically feasible, and the key is that it seems to be related to eating. Forgive him. The characteristics of the big foodie empire have changed its essence even after crossing the border. Seeing Franz's stunned expression, Ferdinand shrugged helplessly. He sighed with emotion. "Franz, you are still too young. You need experience. It's such a trivial matter that scares you." Ignoring Ferdinand's pretense, Ferenc left the palace in a daze. "As I walked, I was still thinking, can roses really be eaten? Has the Grand Duke ever eaten them? Otherwise, why did he put forward a lot of suggestions, all related to eating? Why not process them into other things? Soap, shower gel, shampoo. Ferenc, who had a big brain hole, got out of control and came up with a lot of ridiculous products around roses, occasionally successful, but mostly hilarious. Ferdinand never imagined that his proposal would open up Ferenc's mind. The famous Rose Collective in later generations was thus formed. Of course, there is no less farce. The later Bulgarian director, the Bulgarian Demon King, also made a documentary film It's All the Fault of Roses. Chapter 66, Rose essential oil in development zone. Kazanlak Rose Valley is 30 kilometers northeast of the center, with an average altitude of 200–400 meters. It is the most suitable place for roses in the world. The best quality Damascus roses grow here. The warm and humid air from the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea in the east, and the Balkan mountains in the west block the cold air from the north, causing the temperature difference between morning and evening to be larger than that of the center of the Rose Valley. However, the petals of Damascus roses contain almost no wax, so what should we use to protect the aroma of roses? In order to protect the fragrance molecules of roses from being evaporated by sunlight and moisture, the natural environment with a greater temperature difference between morning and evening creates more morning dew for roses than ever before. The more morning dew, the more it can protect the aroma of roses from being lost. So here has always been rich in the world's top rose essential oil. The processing of rose essential oil has a huge demand for labor. In addition to the large number of workers required for processing, the demand for the number of flower farmers is really huge. Roses are very delicate. The best picking time is 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock every morning. Only during this time can the best quality roses be collected. After picking, the roses are sealed to prevent the aroma from volatilizing, and then shipped to the factory to process rose essential oil using the centuries-old distillation method. Looking at the compiled information, Ferdinand felt more and more headaches. Rose planting is the real intensive cultivation, and at least 2 to 3 experienced flower farmers are required to pick each mu of land. The highest quality rose essential oil requires more than 10 tons of high-quality rose petals to extract 1 kilogram. Even after the new process is adopted, the yield of second-class essential oils is not much higher. Now it takes 3 to 5,000 caddies to extract 1 caddy. Franz did a rough calculation at first, and now the yield per mu of roses is only 300 or 400 kilograms. Even if 1 kilogram of ordinary rose essential oil is extracted, at least 15 acres of land must be planted. If calculated according to the production capacity of 1,000 kilograms of essential oils per harvest, it is 15,000 mu. It doesn't look like much. If it is an ordinary crop, it can be done by dozens of people using mechanized operations. However, to grow roses, the light flower farmers need 30,000 to 40,000 people. Unlike later generations, there should be no problem with rose harvesting in this era, otherwise the fragrance will be emitted, and no oil will be extracted. What really troubles Ferdinand is that the demand for flower farmers is only so great when they pick them every year, and usually they don't need so much manpower at all. Hiring so many workers for a long time means that manpower is wasted. If it is a short-term recruitment, where can I find so many experienced workers? It is also known that rose essential oil makes money, but Bulgaria still does not produce large-scale processing enterprises. This means that the rose industrial park cannot be established in the short term. Do you want to split the processing plant, set up small scattered factories? Thinking about it, Ferranti shook his head again. If it is done like this, then the processing of rose essential oil will become tasteless. There was no other way. Ferdinand could only honestly explain this situation to Ferdinand. After listening to Ferencz's reasons, Ferdinand also felt very troublesome. The 19th century was different from later generations. In future generations, it can be handed over to farmers for scattered planting, and then centralized processing. Anyway, there is car transportation and hundreds of kilometers of road, and it will not take much effort, and it can be refined by chemical methods, and the loss of a little aroma is acceptable. Ferdinand didn't even think about the idea that Ferdinand would set up factories in a decentralized way. To solve the labor problem, it is not impossible, as long as it is enough to find a stable job for the flower farmers. They are usually allowed to go to work as usual, and only during the harvest season are they sent to work part-time for a few days. Ferdinand's brain was wide open, thinking of a solution. Do you want to study the future and engage in tourism? No. This year, which idiot would come to travel? Ferdinand, see if we can arrange the flower farmers in our other factories, and go to work as usual, but come to help during the rose harvest season. Ferdinand thought about it and put forward an unreliable suggestion. Your Excellency the Grand Duke, I have also considered this issue. But now many of our factories are already full, and even if we want to relocate, it is a drop in the bucket. We can't take the lead in violating labor laws and firing workers at will, Franz said with a wry smile. Then, let the workers learn to pick roses. This is even more unreliable. Ferdinand vetoed it before he finished speaking. Seeing that Ferdinand was also troubled, Franz suggested, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, why don't we reduce the scale first, as long as we don't make such a big one at one time, plus the upcoming essential oil processing plant and supporting facilities, within 10,000 people, we can still barely settle it. Ferdinand suddenly had a flash of inspiration, matching. By the way, industrial park, industrial zone. Followed, Ferdinand smiled and said, I have a solution. Franz looked at Ferdinand with some doubts, and a bad premonition emerged spontaneously. Your Excellency the Grand Duke will not make any big moves. Looking at the confused Ferdinand didn't give a shit, and said with a smile, Franz, I plan to build an industrial park, set up a development zone directly under it, and encourage scattered enterprises in the country to gather together. After listening to Ferdinand's words, Franz's face became even more ugly. As expected, I thought to myself, this co-authoring is to relocate the factory. Now there are large-scale factories in Bulgaria, which are basically Ferdinand's industries. Encourage? As long as you speak, can you not move? Seeing Franz, whose face changed drastically, Ferdinand also knew about this proposal, which was a bit too advanced. Even Franz couldn't understand, let alone others. Whether others understand it or not, Ferdinand intends to promote it in Bulgaria. Later generations have proved that industrial concentration is conducive to promoting industrial upgrading. Moreover, the birth of each development zone will drive the development of the local economy and provide a large number of jobs. Franz asked suspiciously, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, now our factories are scattered all over the place to reduce costs and facilitate transportation. If they are centralized, the cost will definitely increase. And can this really solve the problems we face? Ferdinand said in a very positive tone. Of course, once the development zone is launched, it is equivalent to building a new city, and the infrastructure alone can provide tens of thousands of jobs. You can now let go of your hands and feet to recruit people, then set up a construction company and you can place a lot of people. Hearing Ferdinand's idea, Franz was instantly dumbfounded. And there is such an operation. Franz's three views have been subverted. In order to process rose essential oil, he has tossed up a new city. Is this the highest state of using power for personal gain? When Franz was about to leave, Ferdinand added, By the way, when you go on a field trip, Franz, take a look. By the way, where is the right place to build a development zone? Chapter 67, Development Zone. After solving the labor problem, Ferdinand was worried again. How should the development zone be established? What industry is taking as the core? Now is the end of the 19th century, and it is definitely different from the 21st century, and many industries have not yet been born. Moreover, Bulgaria is only a small country with a population of about 3.5 million, which is similar to the population of a city in the previous life. What kind of real estate economy, internet economy, science and technology parks in the high-tech field, and tourism service industry all have nothing to do with Bulgaria. Then the only option for Ferdinand is the processing and manufacturing industry. Combined with the current industrial situation in Bulgaria, light industry occupies a dominant position, and heavy industry is still in its infancy. Moreover, in the light industry, food processing enterprises are the core. A bunch of food processing factories gathered together. That scene, Ferdinand can already think about it. If it is guided, the first development zone in Bulgaria in the future will be a gathering place for foodies, forming a food city. This is just the beginning. It is easy to build a development zone, and Ferdinand can make a decision with a swipe of his head, but to play the role of the development zone, it is necessary to consider the problem more comprehensively. First of all, the transportation must be convenient enough to meet the transportation requirements. Secondly, safety must also be taken into account. The Balkans have always been the European powder keg, and the threat of war must be considered if it explodes at one point. Thirdly, human geography, water sources, industrial raw materials, etc. are also essential factors. After taking an inventory, Ferdinand found that there were not many places that met the conditions in Bulgaria. After that, Ferdinand was even more busy, looking for relevant information and trying to persuade the top government officials. After tossing for a few days, Ferdinand was still hesitant about the choice of the development zone, and finally decided to give up and simply throw the trouble to the government. Isn't the Constantine government the most energetic government in Bulgarian history? Then if I give him another development zone, it must not be a problem, Ferdinand thought irresponsibly. In the office, Constantine, who was reviewing the progress of the first 5-year plan, suddenly snorted, "Ah, cut." The assistant knocked on the door, strode forward and said, "Mr. Minister, the palace just called. The Grand Duke please come over as soon as possible." Hearing that it was Ferdinand's request, Constantine put down the document in his hand, stood up and said to his assistant, "Well, I see. You call me back and say I'll go right away!" Constantine came in a hurry, met Ferdinand in the parlor, and greeted him politely. Doubtfully, he said, "Your Majesty, what's the matter with you looking for me in such a hurry?" Ferdinand smiled and said, "Sit down first, and Alice will add a cup of coffee to Constantine." Constantine did it slowly, but he felt a chill in his heart, thinking to himself, "The Grand Duke is so polite, there must be something wrong, there must be something wrong again." This is the experience summed up by Constantine, and it is also a fact recognized by the high-level Bulgarians. Every time Ferdinand talks to people politely, it means that the next thing is very troublesome. If Ferdinand knew that Constantine arranged him like this, he would definitely let him know what the majesty of a king is. Constantine, did you notice that Bulgaria's economic growth rate has begun to decline recently? Ferdinand asked in a positive tone. Constantine was shocked, and he was about to break out in a cold sweat. He was secretly distressed. Why is the economic growth rate declining? Bulgaria's economic growth is not normal at all. It is entirely dependent on the government's investment in infrastructure. Before, the annual growth rate was as high as 20%, which was completely against the law of the market. It was thanks to the small size of Bulgaria that this record was created. Which country in the world has an economic growth rate that can be compared to Bulgaria now? Does the Grand Duke want to maintain this growth rate? No, he must be stopped. If it goes on like this, the government must go bankrupt. Constantine looked at Ferdinand with a smile on his face. He seemed determined and said firmly, "Your Excellency, Grand Duke, this is a normal phenomenon. In the past 2 years, the government has invested heavily in infrastructure and stimulated economic development. Set this record. From the second half of this year, some projects in the first 5-year plan have been completed one after another. In the later period, government investment will definitely be greatly reduced, and the Bulgarian economy will gradually return to normal in the future." Ferdinand is of course aware of this issue. Now, government investment accounts for 3 tiers of total domestic investment in Bulgaria. If the government suddenly stops investment in infrastructure, it will be a miracle that Bulgaria's economy keeps growing, not to mention falling. Ferdinand looked at Constantine, smiled and said, "You are right. Now the Bulgarian economy is prosperous on the surface, but it is actually in crisis. From the data alone, from 1887 to the present, the total economic volume has increased by almost 80%. Under normal circumstances, it is unthinkable, but the price is a huge increase in government fiscal expenditure. If we don't find new economic growth points before the government's investment in infrastructure ends, the economic crisis is about to break out." Hearing the economic crisis, Constantine broke out in a cold sweat. "That's right, once the government's infrastructure projects are completed, all related industries will be affected, and there will be no place for the more than 100,000 workers who build roads." Thinking of this, Constantine began to regret it. The government investment accelerated the industrialization of Bulgaria, but he did not expect the troubles to be so serious. Looking at Constantine, who was in a state of dismay, Ferdinand secretly complained, "Oh, it's too much, it won't happen." Damn, who knew he wasn't so frightened? Ferdinand asked with concern. Mr. Constantine, are you all right? Oh, I'm fine, Constantine said weakly. Ferdinand looked at the anxious Constantine, and secretly rejoiced in his heart. Fortunately, you don't have a heart disease, otherwise you will go to see God as soon as you climb up your legs. Where can I find a suitable person to take your class in the short term? You don't have to worry too much, the current crisis will not break out, and during this time, we can still take measures to find new economic growth points. Seeing that Ferdinand was confident, Constantine seemed to have a solution, so he hurriedly asked, Grand Duke, what good solution do you have to solve the economic crisis? Ferdinand thought, of course there is a way, but it can't be said. If I tell you now, it can be solved by starting a war, and I won't scare you to death. I plan to build a development zone to drive economic development. Constantine looked at Ferdinand and asked suspiciously, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, what is a development zone? Chapter 68, Contracting New District. Ferdinand said slowly, I plan to let the government introduce preferential measures to encourage domestic enterprises to gather together to form a huge industrial park, and then drive a new round of domestic economic development. Constantine asked suspiciously, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, this is equivalent to artificially building a city. But is it really useful? Enterprises are scattered all over the country, and the total amount has not changed. In terms of raw material transportation, will the cost of many companies increase? Ferdinand said patiently, this is just on the surface. When a large number of people gather together, it will inevitably promote the development of the catering and entertainment industry and increase jobs. There is also the biggest benefit. The gathering of the same industry is conducive to promoting technological innovation of enterprises! Ferdinand tried his best to persuade Constantine. Oh, now he is still not optimistic about the development zone. He only agrees with common sense, and he has no desire to let the government invest. Ferdinand thought for a while, but didn't say anything. If the government didn't invest, he could invest himself. No matter how you look at it, this is also a profitable business. Real estate development alone is enough to make money. Don't you see so many businessmen in later generations waving banknotes and rushing to the development zone? It is not difficult for him to run a city. His own city on the fief of Hungary is not operating well. Ferdinand was relieved, but Constantine was worried. Although he said that he would give it a try, he actually hoped that the development zone would be successful more than anyone else. As the next prime minister, Constantine has changed his mind about the economic crisis. As an international student, he has not heard less about the terrifying nature of the economic crisis. Not to mention destroying a country, at least one cabinet toppling is easy. He took out a map of Bulgaria, convened a meeting of government officials to discuss, and finally selected the suburb of Sliven after many twists and turns. Sliven is an industrial city in eastern Bulgaria and the capital of Sliven Oblast, located in the southern foothills of the Balkan Mountains. It has been a strategic location since ancient times. The city was established in 1153. It is one of the textile centers of Bulgaria. In 1834, the country's first woolen factory was established. There are wool textile, silk textile, textile machinery, machine tool manufacturing, food, wood processing, glass, ceramic industry. There are libraries and museums. In terms of safety, it is already hundreds of kilometers away from the borderline, and it can rely on the Balkan Mountains for defense. The railway has been connected to the traffic, and it is not far from the port of Burgas, which is convenient for transportation. In every way, Sliven is good. Ferdinand was also very satisfied, and later Sliven was still famous for the rose oil in the suburbs. There is another reason that cannot be said. Ferdinand wants industry to stay away from Sofia. In the years of rapid economic development in Bulgaria, the development of Sofia, the capital, is changing with each passing day. At the same time, it inevitably brings environmental pollution, and now the air quality in Sofia has dropped significantly. In this year, it is impossible to introduce an environmental protection law. At most, Ferdinand can only limit the birth of the new factory in Sofia on approval, but he is powerless to do anything about the existing factories. Now the opportunity came, just to pack them away, and Ferdinand wanted to live a few more years. The future Sofia can be Bulgaria's political center, a cultural center, an economic center, but not an industrial center. The Bulgarian government has established a new development zone. Since it has not yet achieved results, the administrative level is not high, but it is only a municipal unit directly under the central government. With the introduction of the preferential measures, the official media, of course, came out to sing praises in a very unscrupulous manner. Oh, the opposition media, unfortunately they are not mainstream. The Bulgarian press law clearly stipulates that news media practitioners are financially open, and newspapers are jointly and severally liable for the content of advertisements. Several newspapers have already paid the price in blood for this. The newspapers closed their doors and their editors were imprisoned. So now, newspapers are not very interested in advertising, and rely on readers to subscribe. Unfortunately, the Bulgarian market is too small, and many newspapers were forced to close their doors. By the end of 1891, there were fewer than 10 newspapers in the country combined, less than a third of what they were in their heyday. Bulgarian public opinion has become unified, and it is almost impossible for chaotic ideas to spread through newspapers. The Social Workers' Party, which Ferdinand ordered the intelligence services to focus on, has not even taken shape. Of course, the main reason is that, from 1888 to 1891, in just 3 years, the average salary of Bulgarian workers has increased by 20%. There is also the introduction of the labor law and the appearance of overtime pay. Now everyone is busy making money, and they are not interested in social movements. They are not fooling people. Naturally, there is no soil for political parties to survive. Because of the brutal struggle between the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party, disgust has broken the Bulgarian people. Under the guidance of Ferdinand, anti-party ideology has emerged in Bulgaria, among which the new generation of students is the main force. The first development zone in Bulgaria was quietly established in a quiet environment. The first head of the development zone was concurrently held by the former mayor of Sliven city, and officials at all levels were basically the same as the original local officials, and there was no change. The Sliven development zone, which was drawn from the city of Sliven, seems to have returned to the original system. From the above, it is enough to see how unpopular the newly established development zone is in the government. Except for a name change and some preferential policies, there is almost no change in personnel. No way, except for Ferdinand. The entire Bulgarian government has little expectations for the new development zone. Everyone tries to keep their influence as low as possible, lest they fail and end badly. Looking at the report sent by Constantine, Ferdinand thought about it and approved it. In line with the province can save, the government has saved a sum of administrative expenses. Anyway, the infrastructure construction projects of the entire development zone have been contracted by the new zone development company that France has just established. According to the agreement, the government of the Sliven development zone has packaged the 10 square kilometers of land in the entire zone to the new zone development company at a friendly price of 100,000 levs. Including the investment and construction in the early stage, the management of municipal services, and the investment promotion in the later stage, all are the tasks of the new district development company. Not only that, according to the agreement, the new district development corporation also needs to ensure that within 5 years, the total enterprise assets of the new district will exceed 100 million leva and the population will exceed 50,000 to be considered a success. If it fails, the development company will pay 3 million levas in liquidated damages, and the new district government has the right to purchase the properties in the development zone at a discount. It's just an empty-handed white wolf, and the government has passed all the risks to the development company. If it is successful, the government can continue to expand the area of the new area and develop it around it. If it fails, the development company will pay for it, and there will be liquidated damages. Fortunately, the development company belongs to Ferdinand, otherwise no one would dare to sign this contract. Although the profit after success is very large, once there is a change in any link, it will be a waste of money. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, It means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, Contracting New District continued. The facts have to start from half a month ago, when Franz, who was still investigating around Bulgaria at the time, was interrupted by a telegram from Ferdinand. The content is very simple. Mr. Franz, the development zone has been settled in Sliven City. You go to Sliven immediately to discuss cooperation matters. Then, Franz ended the trip in a hurry and began to form a negotiating team. Accustomed to the protracted efficiency of the Austro-Hungarian government, Franz has always expressed appreciation for Bulgaria's current high efficiency. But this time with some exceptions. According to Franz's estimates, even if the Bulgarian government wants to establish a development zone to integrate various factors, administrative allocation, personnel transfer, etc., it will not be completed within a year and a half. As a result, 3 days after receiving Ferdinand's telegram, Franz received an invitation letter for the establishment of the Sliven Development Zone, giving him no time to prepare. It's too fast. It's approaching the Bulgarian business community, and there is no time to respond. It took less than a month from public opinion building to the establishment of the development zone. Like the rest of the business world, Franz hurried to Sliven. As the spokesperson of Ferdinand, Franz is already well known in the Bulgarian business community, and all parties have to give some face. How alive and love, the mayor of Sliven and the head of the development zone, came to greet him in person, and when he saw Franz, Hal said cheerfully, "Mr. Lywan, new district." Franz's resounding voice sounded, "Mayor Hal, I'm also very happy to meet you. I believe that Sliven new district will bring me a different feeling!" Most of the big figures in the Bulgarian business community came in person, and even if there was a delay, they also sent representatives. As soon as Franz arrived, he became the central figure. As the head of Volvo, Europe's largest retail leader, he cannot be ignored. As soon as I came to Sliven, people kept coming to visit. What makes Franz embarrassed is that most of them are colleagues and can't be seen. In order to avoid being the target of public criticism, many of Ferdinand's industries are wearing vests, which appear to be independent of each other on the surface. The industrial and commercial circles in Bulgaria are not large, and there are not many influential people. Those who are eligible to be invited are mostly successful in seeking an industry. If you investigate carefully, you will find that half of the participants are from Ferdinand, and the Bulgarian economy is now controlled by Ferdinand. Although the new development area of Sliven is not valued by all walks of life in Bulgaria, the scene is still very enthusiastic, all because Ferdinand is going to attend the opening ceremony. On November 12, 1891, God seemed to give special face, and the golden sun hung high in the blue sky, dispelling the cold of winter. In the Sliven Development Zone, a temporary auditorium was temporarily erected. Not many people attended the meeting. In addition to government officials, there were more than 30 representatives from the business community, and several media such as Bulgarian Daily were also invited to attend. After the tedious set of rituals, Ferdinand started an impassioned speech. A philosopher once said, "I walk a lot in a dream, but I wake up in bed." It tells us vividly that people cannot live in a dreamlike ideal. On the road to achieve our ideals, we are bound to be bumpy and bumpy. We need to have determination, confidence, and a spirit of perseverance. In the face of setbacks, we can't be daunted. We must make concessions. We must have the courage to overcome difficulties, and make unremitting efforts. Because the great Bulgaria has endowed us with passion and strength, and we have no reason to slack off in the slightest, thus wasting it. We must sway the color of life in the continuous pursuit and struggle, and let our ideals fly. What is patriotism? One of the deepest feelings for one's own motherland that has been consolidated for thousands of years. This is our patriotism. 30,000 words omitted. Let's work hard for the rise of Bulgaria. With thunderous applause, the speech ended. Ferdinand's speech was very successful, but he didn't succeed. For this half-hour speech, He plagiarized more than 10 patriotic speeches of later generations of famous people, polished. The purpose is to pretend, right? It is to let people in business circles accept the baptism of patriotism. As soon as the speech was over, Ferdinand withdrew, and how was responsible for the aftermath? How should the development zone develop? This is a difficult problem, and now there are no examples in the world to refer to. The new district government has a headache. How alive and love is now a little regretful. Why should he fight for this position? If you do it well, of course, it is easy to get results and be valued by the superiors, but the question is, how to do it? Totally clueless. Unable to think of a way, Howell asked to teach, and sent a telegram to the top. It's a pity that the Bulgarian central government also doesn't know where to start. Konstantin answered the call very simply. Do it with confidence. I am optimistic about you. By the way, I also came up with an idea that I can discuss with people in the business community. Then there is no following. The Sliven Development Zone can be said to be the poorest municipal unit in Bulgaria. At present, there is nothing but the 10 square kilometers of land set aside from the city of Sliven. Poor and poor. There is not even a government office, and the previous expenses were paid by the Sliven city government. To attract enterprises to settle down, at least there must be infrastructure. Now the Sliven Development Zone is still a wasteland, mixed with a small amount of farmland. The terrain is good and relatively flat. The initial investment alone is not a small number. The central government is obviously not optimistic about the development of the new district, and there is no plan to allocate funds. The preferential tax conditions are okay. Tax-free for the first 3 years, and tax for the next 5.5 years. Bulgarian capitalists are very tempted, but after calculating the initial investment, there is no return on investment without millions of levs. Can such a large investment pay for itself? They gave up one by one, and then it became the current situation. Many people said that as long as the government could solve the infrastructure, they would still support it. Then, under the attention of everyone, Franz stood up and said, he intends to contract the infrastructure construction of the development zone. Then everything went smoothly, and the new district government hurriedly threw the mess out. He also received 100,000 leva, and in addition to repaying the debt of the Sliven city government, there was also the first administrative expense. Chapter 70. Ferdinand has been in a good mood recently. Before crossing the road, he envied the days of the charterer. Now he is the first development zone in Bulgaria, so he started with the price of cabbage. Once the development zone develops in the future, the rent alone will be enough for him to squander, and the monopoly of water, electricity, gas, and property fees will be a lot of income every day. On the other hand, Franz was very busy. Maybe for some people, being busy is also a kind of happiness, which makes people have no time to experience pain. Running around is a kind of happiness, which makes people feel life truly. Exhaustion is a kind of enjoyment, which makes people have no time to be empty. Luckily, Ferdinand had subordinates like Franz, who never complained no matter how hard or tired he was. Recruiting people has never been an easy job, which is related to the development of the company in the future. Now Franz is not recruiting dozens or hundreds of people at a time, but more than 20,000 people at one time. In addition to ordinary workers, there are also some managers. In order to manage the newly recruited workers, Franz even borrowed a battalion of guards from Ferdinand to help maintain order. Even so, trivial things did not happen less often. Now that Franz finally knew the benefits of retired soldiers, he was sent directly as a security guard without training. Before taking up the post, first come to a month of military training. This was Ferdinand's idea, mainly to foster collective consciousness and obedience. Not only that, but like all Bulgarian workers, literacy education is required, and patriotic brainwashing is done by the way. The textbook was adapted by Ferdinand based on the materials of later MLM organizations. Of course, it also mixed with a lot of personal work, which was full of loyalty and patriotism. From the perspective of later generations, this is completely feudal cancer, and crazy personality cultism. However, at that time, in the relatively conservative Balkan region, this idea was still very marketable, except for the occasional noise from young scholars, Others were still very supportive. If it is possible to find a solution to the problems of workers, then managers will be in trouble. Middle and high-level managers can also be withdrawn from other industries, but what about grassroots technical managers? Thousands of grassroots managers, even if Franz tried every means, only half of them were solved. Fortunately, the task is not heavy now. The development project of the new area has just started. The earthwork project does not have high technical requirements, and there is still time to run in the pair. In the age when automobile technology is not yet mature, short-distance transportation is still animal power plus manpower, not to mention excavation and filling. There is no shadow of excavators, and there is no major breakthrough in internal combustion engine technology, so we can't make steam excavators. Even if the terrain is relatively flat, engineers estimate that it will take more than 3 months to complete the earthwork construction of the first phase of the project, and the main body will be completed and put into use, at least by the end of 1892. Ferdinand's idea of achieving results in a short period of time in the development zone went bankrupt at the very beginning. Jackson is a farmer in a small village in Burgas state, Bulgaria. His family has several hundred acres of land, and his childhood is still to come. Since he was a child, he has been envious of the outside world, and when he grows up, he wants to go out several times. However, old Jack has always been very traditional and conservative, to leave little Jackson to inherit the family business, that is, to continue farming. But there are 3 brothers in Jackson's generation. Once the ancestral land is divided, everyone will become strapped for the future. Hearing this, a new district was established and the new district development company was going to recruit people. Jackson knew that this was an opportunity to get rid of a small mountain village, and he could no longer hold back his longing for the outside world. Old Jack blocked as always. Jackson, the outside world is not as beautiful as you imagined. It is full of greed, so be obedient and keep me at home to farm. We have adopted new agricultural technology this year, and our income has increased. The days will slowly get better. Jackson had already made up his mind to go out, so he decided to have a showdown with old Jack. He didn't flinch as usual, and said in a firm tone, "But old Jack, my most respected father, don't forget, we have 3 brothers now. If we split up in the future, our current land will not be enough to support it. 3 families. For God's sake, let me go out. You don't want me and my 2 younger brothers to be able to support children after we get married in the future. Let's go bankrupt together." After listening to Jackson's words, old Jack hesitated. He didn't know the truth, but his mind couldn't get past this hurdle. He simply remained silent, silently wishing Jackson a smooth journey in his heart. In the rural areas of Bulgaria in the 19th century, many families became impoverished because of separation, so much so that some families do not dare to raise more children. Due to the lack of effective contraceptive measures, many children were abandoned in the church after birth, hoping to be adopted by well-meaning missionaries. In fact, we all know that only a few people can really meet well-meaning people. When Ferdinand first came to the throne, he invested in the establishment of dozens of orphanages in Bulgaria, receiving thousands of orphans every year. It can be seen from this that after the Industrial Revolution, the population growth of the Balkans was slower than that of Western Europe. The main reason was not only war but also poverty. As soon as Jackson arrived in Slavin's new district, he heard someone shouting, "Jackson, you are here too, aren't you farming at home?" Old Jack agreed with you to come out? The person who came was his fellow countryman. Jackson asked in a puzzled way, why are you here too? Didn't you run around in Sofia? Don't mention it. The food factory I worked for went bankrupt, and the boss arrested me without paying the salary for the last 3 months. Fortunately, the job is easy to find now, and I have been doing odd jobs for more than half a year. Listen, said that this recruitment is a big company. I think it should be more reliable, so come here and try your luck. Wairua said with a depressed expression. "Oh, God bless you, my poor Very." Jackson said comfortingly. Very looked at the sincere Jackson and said, "Okay, Jackson, tell me about yourself." "I don't believe that old Jack will let you out." Jackson shrugged and said, "Of course, but he won't let me out. I told him that if he didn't let me out, it would be very difficult for him to see his grandson in the future. After stopping, Jackson's words very suddenly became low. His family was much more difficult than Jackson's. In addition to a married sister, he originally had 3 younger siblings. Later, there was really no way. All 3 younger siblings were sent away one after another, and now they are alive and dead. This is also the reason why he will come out early to seek a living. Their family has actually gone bankrupt before. Jackson realized that he had said something wrong and quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, very. You know me and have always been open-mouthed." Chapter 71. Time passed quickly, and it was at the end of 1891, and the long-sought Russian-Palestinian negotiation was finally coming to an end. The negotiation, which lasted for more than a year, involved more than 500 clauses, covering all aspects of political, economic, military and cultural exchanges. On December 15, 1891, the two sides finally reached an agreement and signed the Russian Empire and the Principality of Bulgaria Political, Economic, Military and Cultural Friendly Exchange Treaty, referred to as Russian Pol Treaty, also known as Russian-Bulgarian Alliance. On the day of the signing of the Russian-Russian Alliance, Ferdinand approved it. Only after being sent to St. Petersburg, it can be formally established with the approval of Alexander III. The Russian delegation, who had been in Bulgaria for more than half a year, was busy rushing back to Christmas and declined Ferdinand's stay. Ferdinand, who was in a good mood, also personally attended the farewell banquet and practiced it for the Russian delegation. To be honest, Ferdinand did not expect that this negotiation went so smoothly. Taken together, the Russian-Pol alliance is an equal treaty for both parties. At the end of the 19th century, a small country signed an equality treaty with the great powers, and the difficulties were unimaginable in later generations. That is to say, Ferdinand came from later generations and knew that Russia's diplomatic dilemma was time-consuming. The Franco-Russian alliance is already underway in secret. At the time, the diplomatic risk borne by an alliance with Russia was also enormous. Historically, Bulgaria has been relying on Russia since 1894. At that time, the Franco-Russian alliance had been established, and it was dispensable to Bulgaria, so naturally it would not cost a lot to win over. In Ferdinand's view, with the establishment of the Russian and Bulgarian alliance, Bulgaria has obtained raw materials for industrial development from Russia, as well as a vast market. It is an indispensable part of the industrialization process of Bulgaria. At that time, no other country except the Russian Empire could provide Bulgaria with these 2 points. At the end of the 19th century, in addition to Russia and Britain and France, resource-rich countries had large colonies. However, the British and French industries are developed, and they are basically self-sufficient and do not need to import industrial products at all. But what about other countries? Germany's typical industrial development, he still has to import resources and find a market. Austro-Hungarian industry is not bad, and industry and commerce are closely linked with Germany. How can it not be Bulgaria? Don't think about Italy. He is still a diocese, with poor resources and a backward industry, and he has not yet had the confidence to reach out to the Balkans. The United States is not yet the world police of later generations, and its hands cannot reach the Mediterranean Sea. Even if the two sides trade, the freight alone is higher than the price of the raw materials themselves. So Russia is the only option for Bulgaria. Russia is rich in resources, and it is close to Bulgaria, connected to the Black Sea, and it can come soon. Moreover, the industry is not good, and a large number of industrial products are imported every year. Not only did Ferdinand feel that the Russian and Bulgarian alliance was good, but Alexander III, who was far away in St. Petersburg, was also in a good mood now. Alexander III, the 13th emperor of the Russian Empire, reigned from 1881 to 1894. The reign of Alexander III began under the prosperity created by Alexander II, and Alexander III had no intention of establishing a new deal or interfering too much in actual government affairs. He adopted a method of governing the country similar to the chairman's style. The organization appointed a group of capable people and formed a think tank circle, and let these people first study the country's government affairs, come up with several solutions, and then report it to the emperor himself, make a final decision. During the period of Alexander III, Russia's economic development reached a peak, not only militarily, but also economically, becoming the world's leading power. However, due to the reverse reform measures implemented by the Upper Russian ruling group, ideological development was suppressed. It seriously hindered the popularization of education, affected the general improvement of the national quality, accelerated the confrontation between social classes, and laid the groundwork for the historical process of promoting social development through violent revolution and civil war. In terms of diplomacy, Alexander III actively pursued pan-Slavism, which is of course related to the significant enhancement of Russia's national strength and the continuous rise of its international status. The pan-Slavism pursued by Russia has a strong diplomatic pertinence, mainly targeting the Balkans and the Black Sea coast. This is obviously to expand Russia's influence in these regions and consolidate Russia's dominance in the Slavic ethnic settlements. On the one hand, Russia's policy in the Balkans has played a positive role in enhancing its international status and promoting the development of the local national liberation movement. But the negative factors are also obvious. Activities in the Balkans provided the fuse for the First World War and laid a hidden danger for the fall of the Russian Empire. In addition to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Empire is also competing with Russia in the Balkans. Germany has always hoped to obtain a warm port in the Mediterranean, open up the North Sea, the Baltic Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, and cut off Europe in the middle, so it has accelerated its expansion in the Balkans. This is one of the reasons why the German-Russian relationship is breaking down. In general, Russia in the period of Alexander III was the most culturally and economically close period to Europe. There was a mutual sense of identity between Europe and Russia at this time was completely free of force and only through diplomatic efforts. Achieve political intent. Alexander III's most famous and confident sentence in foreign affairs is, "The Russian Tsar is still fishing, and Europe can wait for the time being." Once Alexander III went fishing while on vacation, and his vassals in charge of European affairs came to Alexander III reported urgent business, and Alexander III said this. Alexander III is arguably the most powerful ruler in the history of Russia in the 19th century. During the reign of Alexander III, Russia launched only one foreign war, the small Battle of Merv Oasis under the command of Skobelev. Merv is an oasis city located in Turkmenistan in Central Asia. It is called Malay in Chinese Han Dynasty documents. In the southern and northern dynasties, it is called the Last Kingdom. In Yuan dynasty documents, it is called Malawut, or Malin. After Merv was incorporated into Russia, Turkmenistan officially became part of the Russian Empire. 1 Due to the influence of the assassination of Alexander II, Alexander III had a shadow in his heart and was afraid of being assassinated, and often lived in Gachina, the palace on the outskirts of the capital. Known as the Hermit of Gachina, and because he rarely waged war, Alexander III was also known as a peacemaker. Chapter 72. After reading the content of the covenant, Alexander III was also very pleased with Paul Shuvalov, and said with a smile, "Count Paul, you have done a good job of negotiating with Bulgaria this time. We only paid a small price, and Bulgaria is firmly tied to the Russian carriage and a nail has been put in the Balkans." Obviously, Alexander III's aura is very strong, at least Paul Shuvalov is fighting in front of him, especially after Germany tore up the reinsurance treaty. Don't think that being afraid of flattery is the patent of the Big Apple, and Westerners are equally reluctant to give in. Paul Shuvalov hurriedly said, "This is all your wise and marvelous skills, Your Majesty the Tsar, leading Russia to prosperity and making Bulgarians yearn for it, and the shrewdness and ability of Crown Prince Nicholas. I just do my part, not worth mentioning." Alexander III seemed to be accustomed to these, but smiled without refuting. After Count Paul finished speaking, he said, "Well, don't talk about these flattering words. There will be a meeting about Bulgaria later, you should stay and attend." Count Paul immediately made a grateful expression, this time sincere. Since the breakdown of German-Russian relations, he has been sidelined and never attended high-level meetings. This time the Tsar kept him for the meeting, which is clearly a good sign that he has a chance to return to the center of power. In Ga China, the palace on the outskirts of St. Petersburg, a meeting about the fate of Bulgaria was held. Without cumbersome etiquette, Alexander III went straight to the point and said, "I want to conclude the treaty with Bulgaria. You all know it. Today's call for you to come here is to determine for a long time in the future, we will Bulgarian foreign policy." Remarks. Not the main characters in the back are called official positions. There are too many foreigners with the same name, and the author will be dizzy. For example, the then Russian foreign minister, Nikolai Gil, who has the same name as Nicholas II. Like this there are a lot more. As soon as Alexander III finished speaking, the Minister of Finance said, "Your Majesty, since we have decided to move our strategic focus to the east, it is enough to maintain enough influence in the Balkans, and there is no need to invest too much energy. But it's only time-consuming. Europe is the center of the world. We will come back in the future. We cannot relax our penetration into the Balkans." The Minister of War immediately objected. The Chancellor of the Exchequer shook his head, and then asked, "But our energy is not limitless, right? The empire's finances cannot support us fighting on two fronts at the same time. The Trans-Siberian Railway has just started construction, which has taken up a lot of our funds. The European contraction in the short term is to devote more energy to the east. After the completion of the Imperial Russia plan, it will not be too late to return to Europe. By then, our national strength will be stronger, and the Balkans will not be able to stop the pace of the empire!" Then all the major dignitaries of the Russian Empire got involved and began to chat with each other. Count Paul stood aside and said nothing. The fire at the city gate affected Chu, and seeing the constant noise below, Alexander III noticed Paul Shuvalov, who was on the sidelines. Now Alexander III, he has not been very interested in politics since the beginning. And the more he hears everyone's talk, the more he has deviated from today's topic. Coughed, and then said, "Okay, everyone, be quiet." Count Paul has just returned from Sofia and is very familiar with the situation there. Let's listen to his opinion first. Paul Shuvalov was taken aback and shouted that it was not good. Now he speaks at this time. Isn't this standing in line? The Russian Empire is now mainly divided into Eastern and European factions, and neutral factions. Oh, it's not over yet. The eastward faction is further divided into the Far East faction, which advocates expansion to the Far East, the Indian faction, which advocates entering Afghanistan and then expanding to India, and the Central Asian faction, which advocates Ottoman expansion to Central Asia. The European faction also has factions. The Balkan faction that advocates expansion to the Balkans, the Nordic faction that advocates expansion to Northern Europe, and even the radical faction that advocates expansion to Austro-Hungary. It's messy and varied. Of course, there is not so much chaos at the top of the government, mainly the Far Eastern and Balkan factions, and there are not so many brainless ideas. Having suffered setbacks in expansion in Europe, the Russian Empire now has the upper hand of the Far Eastern faction, who has the support of Crown Prince Nicholas. Hearing Alexander III's question, Paul Shuvalov immediately said, "Your Majesty, from what I have seen, most Bulgarians are pro-Russian at present, which shows that our long-term infiltration in the Balkans has been successful. And in recent years, Bulgaria's economy has developed rapidly, but it has poor resources and lacks labor. Now Bulgaria is moving closer to the empire, and this is the main factor. If we continue to export resources and labor to them, decades later we can take control of Bulgaria economically." Paul Shuvalov was still very cautious, but returned to the issue of Alexander III, limited to Bulgaria, did not make a clear statement on the Balkan issue, and at the same time showed a tendency to lean towards the Far East. As soon as Count Paul finished speaking, Alexander III showed a strong interest. He didn't like war very much, and economic control of cultural influence was just what Alexander III wanted. Seeing the performance of Alexander III, everyone knew the current affairs and chose to shut up, and no one chose to challenge the authority of the Tsar. So how long do you think it will take us to take control of Bulgaria? Asked Alexander III. Looking at Paul Shuvalov thought for a while, then said, "Your Majesty, if all goes well, Bulgaria will be fully pro-Russian in 20 years, and in 30 years, we can even turn it into an imperial banner without a fight, a Grand Duchy." Sure enough, after listening to Paul Shuvalov's words, Alexander III showed a satisfied smile. Is 20 years a long time? Of course, that's enough time for a new generation to grow up. If it can take a generation to integrate a country, it is too short. Why did the Russian Empire export Slavic culture to the Balkans? Isn't it just to assimilate the Balkan countries and culture? Now Bulgaria takes the initiative to ask for immigration. Isn't it just right? Sitting has ignored that the Russian Empire is not a nation, and even the main nation is less than half. Immigrants are also the majority of other ethnic groups, and the ethnic minorities who have been oppressed for a long time have how much affection they have towards the Russian Empire? Well, if you have no other opinions, then I will approve this treaty. The future empire strategy for Bulgaria is to win over politically and infiltrate economically and culturally. Alexander III asked in a positive tone. Of course, no one will object to this issue. The eastward faction naturally supports it. The Russian and Bulgarian alliance is still promoted by Crown Prince Nicholas, which is in line with their priority Oriental strategy. The European faction has no reason to object, which does not affect them. Strategy: neutrals continue to play soy sauce. After Alexander III approved the Russian-Bulgarian alliance, the Russian government was very efficient. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Bulgarian ambassador to Russia announced the news on Christmas Eve. Chapter 73, The Situation. After the dust settled, Ferdinand finally let go of his dangling heart. Don't you see the French-Russian alliance and history? It took St. Petersburg 2 years to approve it. The Russian and Bulgarian alliance on the bright side is only economic and cultural exchanges and cooperation, and is limited to the economic alliance. But the great powers are not fools, and no country will believe that this is purely economic cooperation. However, in the international situation at that time, the three countries of England, Germany and Austria hoped to turn Russia's attention to the east and reduce the pressure on Europe and India. France hoped to form an alliance with Russia. Ferdinand sent Chekhov to visit at the juncture of the Russian-Brest negotiation, which was also a consideration in this regard. After all, it is more suitable for people from the Ministry of Industry to go to the market for purely purchasing goods. Starting from the United Kingdom, and then passing through France, Germany, and Austria-Hungary, the route is to reveal to the countries that Russia's strategy is moving eastward. Although this is no secret, this move is purely to show the powers that this alliance is not aimed at countries. A butterfly in the Amazon rainforest in South America can cause a tornado in the Americas 2 weeks later with the occasional flap of its wings. The butterfly effect after Ferdinand's crossing has already happened, and there is no Russian-Pole alliance in history. Great powers can ignore it, that is their strength, but the Balkan countries cannot ignore it. The first to be affected is Romania, sandwiched between Bulgaria and Russia has never concealed its ambitions for Romania. Romania should be thankful that the current Tsar of Russia is Alexander III, a pacifist, otherwise their life would be even more difficult. Then there is the Ottoman Empire. They have had a grudge with Russia for hundreds of years, and the two sides are a bloody feud. On average, it has been less than 20 years for the first major war, and the small conflicts have not ended. It is almost time to start counting the days. Next is Serbia. The Cypriot War has only passed for a few years. If it wasn't for Austro-Hungary, the boss, in 1886, it would be hard to say what Serbia is like now. Bulgaria's rapid development in recent years has aroused their vigilance, and now the alliance between Russia and Bulgaria has made them even more worried. And even domestic pro-Russian factions have been hit for a while. Around the alliance between Russia and Bulgaria, the Balkan countries have carried out diplomatic activities one after another, showing their magical powers. The Ottoman Empire continued to strengthen its diplomacy with Germany to seek support, and even made concessions on the issue of the Baghdad Railway. In the late 1880s, in order to compete for world hegemony, Germany pursued a policy of advancing eastward, extending its power into the Near East, trying to build a railway to connect it with the European Continental Railway, and to become a direct railway from Hamburg and Berlin via Constantinople and Baghdad. The Great Railway of the Persian Gulf. This railway not only allowed the expansion of German power in the Ottoman Empire, but also seriously threatened the Caucasus, Persia and other regions and British India. Therefore, it was opposed and obstructed by Russia, France, and especially the United Kingdom, and it was not completed until the outbreak of World War I. Romania chose to continue to move closer to Germany and Austria, and started a new round of negotiations. This time, even the disputed Croatian issue with Austro-Hungary was put on hold. Serbia looked around, and finally reluctantly moved closer to the boss, Austria-Hungary, and quickly put away the previous unpleasantness. For a time, the Serbian pro-Russian faction was beaten with no morale. As Maung's strategy moved eastward, support for them was getting weaker and weaker, and the pro-Austrian faction once again had the upper hand. At the end of the 19th century, Germany's diplomacy was at its peak. Under the leadership of Bismarck, most of the countries in Europe were pro-Germany and allies were everywhere. If it weren't for the successor's new line of diplomacy, coupled with the provocation of European chit-sticks, Germany was forced to make a choice and give up one by one allies, and World War I would definitely be very different. The Balkans are turbulent, history has become unfamiliar, and Ferdinand is now unable to grasp the direction of the future. But looking at the world, Ferdinand's butterfly effect is not so big. What should have happened still happened. At the end of 1891, the Chekhov delegation visited Britain, France, Germany and Austria, returned to Bulgaria, and finally caught up with Christmas in Sofia. Ferdinand summoned the delegation at the palace, and Chekhov handed over a document, saying, "Your Excellency, this is the document we collected during our visit to England, France, Germany and Austria." After Chekhov finished speaking, he saw Ferdinand nodded, and continued to introduce, "These are just what we have seen, because the time was too short and we did not conduct in-depth investigations. According to what we have learned and a preliminary judgment, the four countries of Britain, France, Germany and Austria have a very high level of industrialization. The British Empire, in particular, has far surpassed other countries in terms of industrial scale, invention and promotion of science and technology." Ferdinand listened to Chekhov's report and said nothing, although he knew that many of the contents were wrong, but it was enough to refer to Bulgaria. At least the delegation exaggerated the United Kingdom too much. Ferdinand knew that in a few years, the United States would surpass the United Kingdom in terms of total volume, and Germany would also complete a counterattack in terms of total volume in 10 years. In terms of the so-called promotion of new technologies, the United Kingdom has begun to lag behind. With its vast colonies, the pursuit of technological innovation by the British capitalists has become weaker and weaker. The second industrial revolution has already begun. Due to the lag in the promotion of new technologies, the United Kingdom has only allowed the virtues to complete the industrial transcendence in a short period of time. Of course, none of this has anything to do with Bulgaria now. Although the promotion of new technologies can improve productivity, the process is torturous. What Bulgaria needs now is an industrial foundation, and there is no capital to pay tuition fees for industrial technological innovation. This sacred work should be left to the foreign powers. At the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, all kinds of ideas were surging. Affected by the chaotic trend of thought, many people's thoughts will go to extremes, one-sided pursuit of perfection, while ignoring other factors. Ferdinand, who came from later generations, knew that industrial development cannot be based on one-sided pursuit of quality, nor can it blindly pursue quantity. The cost-effectiveness must be comprehensively considered. No matter how good the quality is, it only exists in the laboratory, and cannot be mass-produced, typically with high input and low output. If the quantity is large and the quality is poor, it will not be able to gain a foothold in international competition. Bulgaria is okay, people are more conservative and don't have that many ideas. Ferdinand should have caught up with the good time. If he was in the World War or the Balkan War, even the traveler would be unable to return to the sky. Chapter 74, 25 Plan. In 1892, as Maung's strategy moved eastward, the situation in Europe was generally stable. There are only two small things worth noting internationally: 1. The Austrians successfully manufactured the world's first automatic pistol, the Schönberg pistol, which was fed from a magazine and loaded with the energy of gunpowder gas. 2. The Communist Manifesto was published in Poland, and communist ideology began to spread. These matters are almost negligible compared to what Bulgaria will discuss next. The first 5-year plan formulated during the stamp period was generally inherited by the new government. The original plan of more than 300 items was cut in half by Ferdinand, which was unrealistic, and more than 50 items were revised. Since the country had sufficient funds after the home raid, by the end of 1891, more than 40 tasks had been completed. The remaining tasks were basically completed by the end of 1892. Travelers are all masters of dossing, and Ferdinand is not a person who can live idle, or let his subordinates idle. Investigations from later generations show that once the bureaucrats are idle, corruption and procrastination will follow. On the contrary, the government will be more clean and efficient if it is busy every day from morning to night. The first 5-year plan is about to be completed ahead of schedule. Want to celebrate? Ferdinand said, no problem. Let's discuss the 5-year plan first and celebrate later. No? Are you unpatriotic? You dare to hinder Bulgaria's development? You can get out. Under the influence of Ferdinand's firm attitude, the Bulgarian government came up with a second 5-year plan very efficiently. In addition, Ferdinand is now holding a national policy meeting and is also sending a signal to the outside world that the new Bulgarian cabinet has been selected. The future development outline is in front of you. You can't change halfway. Isn't that a drag? Bulgarian people are absolutely unacceptable now. After using economic means to control public opinion, Ferdinand began to boil frogs in warm water, moisturizing things silently. Over the years, the Bulgarian folk thought was unknowingly led by Ferdinand. What used to be prevalent was liberal democracy, party politics and ideology first, and then the development of industry. Now it has become the priority to develop productive forces, promote national industrialization, and then realize freedom and democracy. The slogan of the media has also become bread, not freedom. In addition, the living standards of the people have indeed improved in the past 2 years. This view was quickly accepted by Bulgarians. In the past 2 years, the government's work has been obvious to all. This is inseparable from the efforts of everyone here. On behalf of Bulgaria, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone for their efforts. As soon as Ferdinand finished speaking, there was thunderous applause. This is true, Ferdinand can be sure. After all, it is to be praised. Applaud for yourself. Among them, Mr. Constantine's performance is particularly outstanding. He is conscientious in presiding over the government and has achieved remarkable results. Now I announce the appointment of Konstantin Atalov as the Prime Minister of the Bulgarian Interim Cabinet. Before the start of the national policy meeting, Ferdinand first dropped a blockbuster. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then there was thunderous applause again. When Konstantin became Prime Minister, everyone was prepared, and news had come out before. There are very few Bulgarian governments that can compete with him now. The most advantageous Chekhov was not politically sensitive and had no political ambitions, so he quit. Then there is the former Agriculture Minister James, who is also qualified, which is even more bizarre. The interest in scientific research is much stronger than that in politics, and it is now mostly in the laboratory. Then no one else is worth mentioning, and basically no one can shake Konstantin's status. Oh, and a former Prime Minister Stambulov, who was trained far away in Vienna, but probably no one in Bulgaria would welcome him back. Even so, Konstantin was still very excited, and he stepped on the pinnacle of power like this. Looking at Ferdinand gratefully, he didn't know what to say for a while. Ferdinand smiled and said, "Okay, let's introduce the achievements of the first 5-year plan and a basic situation of unfinished projects." After Ferdinand's interruption, Konstantin had recovered from his excitement, adjusted his mentality, and said in high spirits on January 5, 1888, the Bulgarian National Assembly passed the first 5-year plan. History will remember this moment. It set off the beginning of Bulgaria's industrialization. It has been 4 years since 1888, and through the hard work of all Bulgarian citizens, we have achieved a staged victory. First of all, in terms of education, as early as 1890, we completed the task. We built the first university in Bulgaria from scratch, with more than 1,500 university students, and the first batch of graduates is about to go society. Established 8 vocational colleges with more than 13,000 students, 36 new middle schools with a total of more than 50,000 middle school students nationwide, 83 new primary schools with primary school students nationwide, a total of more than 110,000 people. In terms of transportation, by the end of 1891, a total of 987 kilometers of railways and 8,658 kilometers of highways had been built. That is to say, under normal circumstances, we have completed the goal of 1,000 kilometers of railways today! Constantine talked for half an hour with high spirits, and only briefly introduced the results of the first 5-year plan. Of course, this is Ferdinand's abridged version of the first 5-year plan. Judging from the results, Bulgaria can now declare success to the outside world. In many areas, the tasks have been completed ahead of schedule and exceeded. These data, everyone knows in advance, but still cannot help but excited. Ferdinand is an exception. He may have seen a lot in his previous life, and he is not sensitive to these data, and he does not think it is anything special. Compared with the first 5-year plan, the current second 5-year plan is the real problem. The scope involved is wider and the tasks are more important. Once completed, Bulgaria is also a rising industrial country, and the total industrial volume will surpass Sweden in one fell swoop and enter the top 10 in Europe. After a pause, Ferdinand saw that everyone had calmed down from his excitement, and said, "Well, let them pass over the past. Only by looking to the future can Bulgaria develop better. Now it's time for us to think about it." The issue of the second 5-year plan, everyone has read the draft in advance, so now we will start to demonstrate the feasibility. The first is military reform, which we mentioned in the first 5-year plan, but it was delayed due to unexpected factors. Chapter 75. 25 plans to start. Concentrating on experts from various industries in Bulgaria, after half a month of argumentation, the second 5-year plan was finally formed. The second 5-year plan is still based on economic construction, supplemented by military, education, medical care, agriculture and other industries. The biggest difference from the first 5-year plan is that the second 5-year plan focuses on both heavy industry and light industry, and the government will focus on supporting the processing and manufacturing industries. Bulgaria's second 5-year plan involves a total of 283 large and small projects. The core tasks are as follows: 1. Large-scale railway plan. 3,400 kilometers of new railways will be built within 5 years, basically completing the series connection of major cities in the country. 2. Large highway plan. 20,000 kilometers of new highways will be built within 5 years. It is necessary to ensure that the highway penetrates into every small town in the country and connects half of the villages in the country. 3. Large iron and steel plan. It will be completed within 5 years, with an annual output of 56,000 tons of refined steel and 124,000 tons of iron, basically meeting Bulgaria's own use. 4. Military reform. Learn from the German army to set up a staff department, and add an internal staff to be responsible for the daily life and ideological education of soldiers, simply put, brainwashing. The large reserve plan was launched. Starting in 1892, 60,000 reserve soldiers will be recruited every year for the next 5 years for a 1-year service period. The standing army remains unchanged at 65,000, and the vacancies are selected from the reserve. 5. Agricultural reform. Continue to promote mechanized farming, promote new agricultural technologies, and expand the production capacity of chemical fertilizers by 200,000 tons. Mainly phosphate fertilizers and urea. Synthetic ammonia has not been developed yet, and there are only 2 simple technologies: organize farmers to build water conservancy projects and complete the goal of ensuring crops in major grain-producing areas during droughts and floods. 6. Education. In the second five-year plan, the government prioritizes investment in education to technical colleges and encourages the transformation of middle schools into vocational colleges. 7. Medical reform. Intensify efforts to train medical staff, increase medical colleges, encourage veteran doctors to take apprentices, and the state provides some subsidies. The government has set up training courses and regularly organizes private doctors to study to improve the medical level. 8. Military industry. Expand the arsenal, introduce new equipment and new technologies from foreign countries, add heavy artillery production lines, and complete the localization of army weapons within 5 years. The Bulgarian second five-year plan led by Ferdinand nominally started in 1893, but in fact, it did not start at the same time, and many projects would be launched ahead of schedule. For example, the railway plan did not stop construction because of the completion of the first five-year plan task, but continued construction. For them, the second five-year plan has already started. And like military reform, 1892 will also start. But this does not affect the propaganda that the second five-year plan was launched in 1893. Anyway, the people don't care whether it was launched earlier, they only care about the final result, and there is no increase in income. On February 6, 1892, Ferdinand officially approved the construction outline of Bulgaria's second five-year plan, referred to as the second five-year plan. On the same day, the Bulgarian propaganda department officially released the contents of the second five-year plan. As soon as the second five-year plan was released, public opinion was detonated, and Bulgarians turned their attention to it. Of course, the focus of attention varies from industry to industry. The railway workers, for example, have focused on the big railway plan, which means that their livelihoods will be settled in the next 5 years. Farmers focus on agricultural reform, and many people have benefited a lot from it in the first five-year plan. Capitalists are paying more attention to the new economic policies and whether the government will continue to increase investment in infrastructure, which is related to their future investment direction. If one were to rate the Bulgarians in 1892, many would say busy. That's right. Now Bulgaria is very busy all over the country. As soon as the second five-year plan was launched, all walks of life became busy. In the busyness, the lurking crisis was concealed. Only Ferdinand knew that Bulgaria's economy was already very dangerous, and the industrial development lacked both sufficient industrial raw materials and a vast market. Once the government stops investing in construction, the economic crisis will break out. If it is a big country, it can also use tariffs to protect the market, but it is completely impossible for Bulgaria to have a title. A market with less than 4 million people cannot support the industrialization of a country. The alliance with Russia is Ferdinand's most effective strategy to divert the crisis. The 14th economic crisis of the capitalist world, or the third great economic crisis, has broken out. In March 1890. The German stock market plummeted, and since then the stock price has fallen for more than 2 consecutive years. From 1890 to 1891, there were about 15,000 bankruptcies and a 60% reduction in railway construction. The crisis was exacerbated by the poor agricultural harvest. If history does not change, this economic crisis will spread to the whole world. Now there are some signs, and the whole body is affected. Bulgaria is powerless to survive. In 1893, the economic crisis broke out. In the United States, the average market price of industrial stocks fell by nearly half from January to August. The price index of metals and metal products fell by 44%, and the price index of textiles fell by 26%. However, it is worth mentioning that this economic crisis has not had such a big impact on Russia. Due to the backward industrial development and a large enough market, it has survived this crisis in a stable period. Of course, although the Bulgarians now know that the economic crisis has broken out, they do not know that it will spread to the Balkans, much less that it will affect the situation in the Balkans in the future. Ferdinand didn't know very well about this period of history. Anyway, he knew that after the economic crisis spread to the Ottoman Empire, a new round of revolutionary upsurge broke out, which is somehow related. Ferdinand was ready. Once it was determined that the economic crisis was going to affect Bulgaria, he began dumping to the Balkan countries. He even had his vests ready. British, French, German, Austrian and Russian companies had everything. As long as the speed is fast enough, there is no network in that era, so make a time difference and throw the crisis out. As for the consequences, it doesn't matter. In fact, Bulgaria's second five-year plan has attracted the attention of those who are interested. Even though Ferdinand dealt with the content of the military reform in a low-key manner, it was still discovered. At least the expansion of the army could not be covered up. Even the reserve force caused many people to feel uneasy. Bulgarian people are all talking about it. I'm afraid there's going to be a war. 80% of the time. Let's guess who we're going to hit, but still a guess. Of course it's Serbia. The accounts from a few years ago have not been settled yet. Now the government will definitely take revenge. I don't think so. Serbia attacked us a few years ago. And it wasn't the buttocks that we spanked. We need to expand our army to beat them. I think most of them are the Ottoman Empire. The government wants to rescue the compatriots in Macedonia. So don't think so. It must be Serbia. Osman is not easy to mess with. Gia, what are you afraid of? The current Osman is not good. What's so scary about the sick man of West Asia? If you are afraid, don't join the army at that time. The task of fighting Ottoman is handed over to me. HMPH. How is this possible? I've been disliked by Serbia for a long time. This time I must fight Serbia, and then I can find revenge on those bastards. Stop. It's not a solution for you to be so noisy. Why don't we take a gamble? Whoever loses will help the other party. B. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.